I would like to call this special quorum court meeting to order. The purpose of this meeting is to continue working on items pertaining to the 2016 budget process. The prayer in the pledge is going to be handled by J.P. Patterson. J.P. Patterson. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, J.P. Patterson. Carly, would you call the roll, please?
Daniel Balls.
Here.
Harvey Bowman.
Here.
Rick Cochran.
Here.
Robert Dennis.
Here.
Lisa Ecke. Ann Harbison. Here. Sharon Lloyd.
Here.
Tom Lundstrom.
Here.
Eva Madison.
Here.
Sue Madison.
Here.
Joe Maxwell.
Here.
Gary McHenry.
Here.
Joe Patterson.
Here.
Butch Pond.
Here.
Bill Ussery.
Here.
Quorum present. You have the agenda in front of you. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
I'll make a motion we adopt the agenda.
And I have a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Agenda is adopted. You're coming up on the review of the 2016 budget request. These budgets were requested to be reviewed at last night's meeting. I will begin with the Election Commission. Jennifer, would you come forward, and whoever you want to sit with you, pull up chairs to be comfortable. And I'm going to turn this over to J.P. Cochran.
Thank you, Judge.
Y'all get comfortable, and there's no hurry. Just take it, yeah.
At our meeting last night, we were talking about the amount we were expending for the equipment for voting, understanding that a few of the JPs had conversations with y'all, and they came away with a feeling that that was not the basic need for the year. It was we'd like this best, okay? And I understand that, and you brought us a budget, explained it. When we get down to the final wire and we see all the money from all the budgets brought together, and we haven't met our goal, even the lowest goal for reserve this year, we discussed last night if there was anything that we felt like we knew that could be trimmed that doesn't drastically affect anybody. Your department came up. So with that, the question in my mind is what would be on the small equipment line that you have $420,000 requested for your budget, what would be realistic for you to bring the county into the new equipment, which is needed, and we understand that, so that we can kind of help get us on track financially, and then with knowing that we know you need this equipment, and hopefully over the next 2 years we can get you that equipment, and then when the next general election comes around for presidential election, we have you, to where you can go to this, would you call it a pod-based?
Vote centers.
Vote centers, okay. Which I like that idea. I think it's a very progressive way to do it, but it also comes with a cost. So with that, I'll let you present and let the JPs chime in.
I'll start out. Okay. Unfortunately, I wasn't at last night's meeting. However, I did get some reports from what was said, and Tom and I talked earlier today. Unfortunately, as sometimes happens when you're at events, conversations get truncated, and sometimes things get lost in that conversation. What Tom understood from me is not what I said. I did thank him for his dissenting vote, simply because I knew that he was standing on conviction, and that it takes a lot of nerve, that's probably not the right word, courage, to stand against everybody else and be the one dissenting vote. And I admire that. Tom knows what he believes, and he stands on it. And that's not to say that any of y'all don't. And actually, I would like to thank all of the people who voted for it, because that's where we hoped we would be. But I am the one, unfortunately, who did not communicate properly with Tom. And I take that responsibility myself. What I was telling him was, I understand it's a big amount of money, but it is what we need. We are in a department that is as tight as we can possibly be. There's a philosophy that we reuse, repurpose, and we do everything possible to make sure that every dollar is spent in a way that is responsible to the citizens of Washington County. So when I was talking to him, I admitted that that was a lot of money, but it was what we, after a lot of study and a lot of kicking stuff around, what we decided we really needed as the bottom line. Now, it's also regrettable that maybe the impression was given that we were not unanimous on this decision, or that there was maybe some an uncertainty about what we had presented to y'all as the need. I want to say before you all tonight that it's interesting on our commission, we are almost unanimous on every issue. That should be a problem, actually. but you know the old saying. But there are very few things that we disagree on, because this is not a Democrat or a Republican issue. This is the citizens of Washington County that we serve, and we're mandated to serve the people of Washington County and to provide them with functioning and efficient elections, and we try to do that. Now, there was also maybe something that was said about our staff that maybe was not complimentary to the commissioners and maybe not to our staff. You won't find a better staff than the ones that we have. I already said how tight-fisted we are about what we do. The commission guides the staff implements that, but we have a great staff. And I sure don't want anybody to feel like we haven't appreciated them, because there's a presumption that they're the ones leading the thing. They're not. That's what the commission does. And finally, the third thing is specifically to your question, Rick, about the funds. How much do we need? And I will just tell you my statement before Jennifer actually answers your questions specifically. We need it. We didn't submit a penny more than we thought we needed. And in the interim, we've found that may not be all we need, but that's what we're trying to start with. And we appreciate it if you all would stand with what you approved at the last budget meeting where we appeared. Now, Jennifer can take over and answer questions, or you probably have some things you want to say.
Thank you. The quantity of the voting, the automated voting that you have now, I had written in my notes that in 2006 we had 171. Mm-hmm. Is that still our same number?
That is still our same number currently that we have, okay, that Washington County owns.
Right.
That was the number. Let me back up. Actually, in 2006, we purchased 165 touchscreens and 3 650s. That was to count the paper ballots. We came back to the Quorum Court in 2010 to ask for 12 additional machines at a cost of less than $25,000. At that time, when we asked for the 12 additional machines, we had hoped to get new voting equipment even the touchscreen itself. But by 2010, the voting equipment was already outdated, and we could only purchase used equipment. So we've only ever come to the quorum court once to ask for additional voting equipment. But 171 is what we currently have.
Okay. For your budget request, I believe you requested 324 of these units?
That is correct.
Okay. Can you explain why you need 324 when you have 171 and we're okay?
Sure. What we want to do is move away from a paper-based ballot system, where in 2012, we spent $75,000 on paper ballots alone. We hope to transition and want to transition to an electronic voting base where we don't throw away unused ballots. I don't have to guess how many ballots of a particular precinct I have to order to meet the needs on election day. So it will allow us to save money in the long run by purchasing the 324. And how I came to that number is I looked at the number of people who actually vote on election day, and you run a percentage of 200 based on each machine, and that's how we came up with 324. So it was, a mathematical equation to get to that number. In order for us to move forward with just all electronics, we made the decision to only purchase one of the DS 850s, which cost $115,000, because ideally that machine will only be counting early vote, which is a limited number of paper ballots up in the county clerk's office, and then absentee ballots. But the 90% of the ballots that we would cast would be on the express votes or the touchscreens. If we cannot transition to the 324 touchscreens that we need, it would, in essence, cause us to actually need two of the DS 850s at $115,000, because now we're relying on paper ballots more than what we had anticipated. And so it actually, by delaying the full implementation of the $420,000, in the long run will cost the quorum court more money.
Are you saying that on election day, I would not be able to do a paper ballot?
That's the goal we're going to, yes.
It's going to make my mother very mad.
I know it will. We are actually offering, you'll be able to vote on a paper ballot during early vote in the county clerk's office. And then, of course, you would have limited number of paper ballots at the polls on election day for provisionals. But we saw with the September 8th election that we had from the city of Fayetteville, only 32 people cast a ballot on a paper ballot that just refused to do it. And that was out of 10,000 or more votes cast that day. I didn't receive one phone call from a voter complaining about the fact that they couldn't cast a paper ballot, but we received many compliments about the fact that they could vote at the closest location.
Okay. Well, that's all my questions,
Thank you,
Judge.
Madison.
Thank you, Judge. One of the things I had recalled was the additional expense if we did delay the implementation, and so I'm really glad that you explained that. The other thing I wanted to address, though, is it seems to me that what you're trying to do is be ready for a presidential year, the hardest of the election years. And if we delayed this, we would not be able to do the voting centers for the presidential election next year. Am I right there?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
I mean, I don't know. If we did it piecemeal, we would sort of have to stick with the way we're doing things and then implement the voting centers at some later time, which it just seems like if we're trying to make it easy to vote, you would do it on the election that has the biggest turnout.
Correct. In 2016, which will be the presidential election year, right now, and this is just a small estimate of what our voter registration number will be. Let's say it's 120,000. Currently, we're at 117,000 registered voters, but we know by November of next year, we'll be well over 120,000 registered voters. If we have a 70% voter turnout, that's well over 80,000 people who are going to show up at the polls on election day and vote, which is almost more which is the same amount of registered voters we had back in 2006 when we first got our voting equipment. So we've exceeded certainly what we've done in 2006, and so that's why we're having to ask for the $420,000, because when the state appropriated the funding, they looked at our 2006 numbers, didn't give us any credit for the growth that we've seen in Washington County.
And then I guess the last, I mean, you all have my full support. You had it. I'm the sponsor of the voting center ordinance that's up for tomorrow. And so obviously to do that, we need this money. But if we were to somehow piecemeal you all and just give you a third or a half of this money, it's not like we're going to avoid spending it. It just delays it into another year, which is likely just next year's budget. So this is not really a cost savings. It would just be a deferral. And in fact, with the additional DS 850, it would be more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Overall, without the full funding, with the additional DS 850, we're looking at needing an additional over $522,000, because by trading in one of the DS 850s, that allows me to negotiate and get more touchscreens. If I have to purchase two, that lessens the total amount of touchscreens that I can get from 80. I'm requesting originally 81 from the quorum court. Now that bumps that number up to 105 that I'll need. So it will additionally add money.
Well, and this is an expenditure that benefits every citizen in the county, in the cities, in the counties, in the unincorporated parts of the county. So since most of us are city JPs, this is actually an opportunity for us to spend money that has a direct impact on every citizen in the county and every one of our constituents, as opposed to some that have a less direct impact. So I don't know if we need to make a motion since we've already approved this, but do we table it? Can we do that?
May I speak, Judge?
Yes, please.
You've approved their budget. The burden would then essentially be on those who want to do something else now. In other words, if somebody wants to change their budget, that person needs to come up and say so at this point in time.
Okay, well then I'll yield the floor. Thank you.
JP Harbison?
I support the money that we've already appropriated for you. I think that voting is one of the most important things that citizens do, and I think we would be counterproductive in trying to piecemeal this. Thank you.
JP Dennis?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The question I had, the municipalities or cities, do they pay for the use of the machines
Yes.
when they have elections?
Yes, for a special election, we bill them for poll worker costs, for right now paper ballot costs, and the RTL paper that goes in the touchscreens and all of that. So they pay for those types of things for any special election that they have. And then in regards to the general election, the county is responsible for half of the cost for the general election, and then the cities, based on a percentage of votes cast, pay for the remaining part of that. You know, and I know we're talking about the $420,000, but our department also returns money back to the quorum court by getting funding for the primary, you know, billing the special elections and everything like that. So, you know, we receive back, you know, well over $350,000 for the elections that we hold.
Okay, very good. So back to the original question. So how much would it's the city of Fayetteville, how much does the city of Fayetteville pay back for a special election?
So for the September 8th election that we just had, I billed them close to $40,000 for that election.
Okay, and that's for actual costs, not for the use of the machines.
Not for the use of the machines, no.
So would there not be a cost included in using the machines, especially as you go forward?
Our department administers the elections, so there's not really a use of the machines. We do it all. We conduct the election. and we just do it like in this one for the city of Fayetteville. Does that make sense?
No.
I think, and I may be wrong, and Steve, you may want to help me out. I think what you're trying to get at is, should we charge a fee based on the machines to the cities to recoup costs that the county is spending? And I don't think that we legally can do that.
Judge, may I?
Yes,
speak to
please.
that? Generally speaking, for the county to charge, especially the cities within the county, any kind of, and actually Justice Lundstrom and I had this discussion on a different topic much earlier this year, but for us to have, there has to be a specific statutory authority for that. In other words, we have to have a legislative enactment saying, county, you're allowed to charge Fayetteville, Springdale, whomever, X number of dollars, either as a flat fee or based on a number of users for this service. No such thing exists for elections. Elections primarily, this is not, but they fall basically to the county to administer, as Chairwoman Olschlager said, and also to the state as the overall administrator, the Secretary of State's office. So no matter what the election is, we're going to count the ballots here. If the election happens in Washington County, if it's a special election for Lincoln Alderman, we're counting the ballots in Fayetteville, Washington County. But while they would pay, Lincoln would pay for actual cost for that. They don't pay what it amounts to machine rent because we're not statutorily authorized to charge them for it. We are statutorily authorized to charge them, and in fact must charge them for special city elections, for the direct cost to us for administering a special city election or school board election, for example.
So you're saying there's not a direct cost in owning the machines?
No, I didn't say that. There is certainly a direct cost to owning a machine, and that falls to the county.
Thank you.
Let me make one observation, Steve, if I may.
Yes, you're recognized.
This is an unusual situation that we're coming to the county quorum court to ask for funds to purchase this equipment. Note that 10 years ago, the state paid for all of the cost of the equipment. This year, they didn't pay for all of it. They allocated $30 million to be allocated to 75 counties. Well, not all counties are equal. We were shorted $420,000 in our need process to purchase the equipment required to do the job that we've been mandated to do. So consequently, this is the first time in anyone's probably serving period on this quorum court that you've ever seen this commission come for any monies for equipment. Normally, it's not the case. This is the case. So we can't charge the constituency out here, which would be the cities and communities, a fee for using our equipment because we don't have any way to do that. Number one, there's no law that says we can do that. So the county is in a position now to have to fund a part of the process for our elections in order to get us up to speed. And the other thing that we haven't talked to you about at all is we are only coming up to current absolute necessary needs for equipment. There is no margin in this process today for the future growth in our counties, and we're looking at an acquisition that must last us 10 to 15 years. The saving grace is this equipment can be updated. The old equipment could not be. So if we ever have to come back to you in the future, it'll be on an incremental basis and not any major magnitude. The state will take care of us for the most part, but as we grow, we may have to come back to the county and ask for help to serve the increase in the voting population that we're accruing here in Northwest Arkansas. So that's a little more information that you needed to have. We don't talk to you about this. They're all internal discussions we're dealing with the Secretary of State, the governor's office trying to get budgeting needs met. And it's, you know, when they close the door and say, this is all you're going to get, and it's based on 2006 numbers, where does that leave us today? You know, we're 10 years behind the curve right now in serving our voter population. So that's the reason you're in the mix.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. J.B. Bowman.
Yeah. Thank you, Judge. You know, you guys are making a very compelling case for this thing. And I guess the first question I've got is, would you anticipate coming back next year? What kind of request would you have for equipment next year?
We don't. 2016 is our big year, you know. That's the presidential year. You don't have an incumbent running. We expect a 70,000, you know, a 70% voter turnout, close to 80,000 or more ballots cast on election day. That's the year we need the equipment.
Okay.
2018 will be for the governor's race.
Okay.
So we won't be coming back to you in 2017, 18, 19, maybe not even in 2020.
Yeah.
So it will be down the road that we come back to you requesting additional equipment.
Okay.
We need the equipment for 2016,
Okay.
not 2020 or 24.
You say these machines can be updated, so you go ahead and update the software in those machines and they'll continue to serve.
Yes, the equipment we currently have, there is no update for it. In fact, that company is here doing maintenance on our equipment as we speak, and there are certain parts of that equipment you can't even order anymore. But the new equipment that we will be purchasing can be updated. The software can be updated. We'll no longer be programming elections on XP computers. We'll be able to get up to speed, and then that program itself will be able to be updated.
Okay,
so we're
what
not
about-
stuck back in.
What about the $185,000 piece of equipment? You said that you were going to postpone buying two of them instead of one, buying one instead of two?
Yes, obviously, if we don't, when we get the 324 express votes, that's what we need to go to almost a paperless election. And that would necessitate us buying the extra DS 850. We would only need to purchase the one of them. But if we're talking about still 60% of our ballots cast on election day as paper, we're going to need that second machine to count all those paper ballots. Back in 2012, for the presidential election, we had a 2-page ballot. We had 3 650s running at that time, and the ladies who ran the machines never took a break. They started at 8:30, and they didn't end till well past 2 o'clock, and that was just counting because you had a 2-page ballot with no interruptions, no stops. And so we don't want to find ourselves in that situation, especially if you only have one. Then you've got a single point of failure. If that one machine breaks down on us, then what are we going to do when we're talking about a large number of paper ballots that we're expecting it to count?
Okay, now this DS 850 is one that runs with the new equipment?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
It can be updated as well.
Okay.
And so, you know, right now, if you looked at our voting equipment, we look like we're still back in 1985 with our zip disk and our old printers and everything like that. But it can be updated as well, so there would be no need
Okay.
to update it. And when we're talking about using that one machine just for early vote and absentee ballots, we're not going to wear it out
Okay.
like you would.
Okay, one other thing I think, by the way, I really appreciate you making the comment about what's happening in Little Rock. It appears to me that Little Rock is shifting a lot of responsibility for financial issues. You know, we've had to hear a lot of that kind of situation this year, so I appreciate you bringing that into play too. One other thing that I'm sure Jennifer hates to even hear me ask a question because she knows how I feel about early elections and the fact that we're keeping them open for 2 weeks. I believe you said that 90% of the voting is taking place on the day of the election. That only leaves 10% out there being voted early and absentee.
That would be paper ballots is what I meant. Early vote, we're looking at 40%. But if we're talking about a paper-based election, we're talking about most of the ballots being cast on paper. But we're looking at 40% of the voting happening early.
How much would it save you to do a 1 week
instead of 2 week on the early ballots?
Well, it wouldn't, Becky's office, and actually I should say the county clerk's office, is mandated to be open for the 2 weeks. There's
Okay.
no getting around that.
Okay.
And it's her office where the paper ballots have been and traditionally will be.
be, right.
When voters come in to vote, on election day for the general election, we have early voting set up here in the quorum court, and it's all touchscreen. But we know that there are the voters who want the paper ballot, and we still want to give them the opportunity to vote it. Might not be on election day, but it'll be during early vote, and the county clerk's office will have the paper ballots, and
Okay.
she can't change from the 2 weeks.
I'm talking more especially about the remote areas, not those two locations.
For-
Because those are the ones that would create most cost in the early balloting, wouldn't it?
Well, those are all touchscreen only. We have no paper ballot at
I know,
any
but what I'm talking about is personnel costs.
personnel. I think that, especially for the 2016 election, when you're talking 80,000 plus voters on election day, we want people to vote early, because the lines on election day, regardless of how many poll workers I put out in place and the equipment we have, we will see unprecedented long lines. But if we have the full 2 weeks of early voting, that will cut down what we see on election day. It will make our election night process that much smoother. So I think for 2016, if any election you want to have 2 weeks of early voting, that definitely is
Yeah.
the
Well,
time
I
to
guess
do that.
my opinions come from the fact that my wife and I voted early routinely, and we go into these centers and there's hardly anybody there. There's more people at the poll than there is there to vote. And so I guess that was one of the things that I felt like that 2 weeks under that kind of circumstance didn't make much sense to have 4, 5, 6, 8 people there to handle polls when there's very few people coming through.
We see it ebb and flow, and it just depends on the time of day. Sometimes you come in, the quorum courtroom, even though technically the county clerk's office is open, is packed, always. Even the rodeo grounds and has a constant flow of voters coming in.
Okay.
What Pulaski County has experienced, because they've had early voting open much longer than we have in the off-site, it's the consistency. And, we need to make sure that we maintain the same polling places, the same hours, so that people consistently know, hey, I can early vote, this is the 2 weeks, and these are the same 6 places that we have opening. So we think that we'll just grow at those places, and I think we'll see the results of that next year.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
J.P. Lundstrom.
Can I interject something?
Yes, ma'am, you're recognized.
Somebody asked what XP is. That's Windows XP, which is a platform operating system that is no longer supported by Microsoft. So that's what we've been working on. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I thought I ought to take the opportunity to make my feeble argument. I told Renee, she and her husband Denny and I have known each other and been friends for many years, so there's no hard feelings between us at all. But part of my problem with this whole thing has been the process. Like a year or so ago, we added more voting sites. And when we add more voting sites, guess what that means? We need more poll workers, we need more machines. The vote was getting through before, but we just keep building and building on a thing. That seems to be what government does. It just keeps getting bigger. And I know our county's bigger as well. I'm not that foolish. But I think we could cut some of this expense, if we'd slow some of this down a little bit. This is my personal opinion. So I told Renee on the phone this afternoon, I said, I don't expect you to lose this. You'll probably still win at 14-1. But come down and make your point. The conversation we had the other night, she and I was talking this afternoon, probably had 8 words in the total conversation. So there wasn't a lot of detail about anything that was said. So I just repeated what I heard. So anyway, $420,000 is just an awful lot of money when we've got departments here whose whole budget has been turned down. We've got department here whose budgets have been reduced we're giving a bonus this year to our employees instead of a raise, which I would prefer to do. But we're going to spend $420,000 to vote. That's just hard for me to do. So I wish you all well. God bless you and have a good evening. Thank you, Madam Judge.
Thank you, Tom. Any other comments?
Judge, ma'am.
Yes, go right ahead, Bill.
Thank you very much. Let me share this with you. Being on the Election Commission is a new experience for me. I've been in politics for quite some time, and we followed it and know the routine and how things go. Tom, you're right, and it looks like government just gets more involved at every turn. But our problem is that all of our problems come from the legislature and the Secretary of State's office. Now, we have to deal with the constituents in Washington County, and you guys get thrown in the middle on this thing. You have very little oversight. You have responsibility. That's a bad scenario. But we have a job to do that's mandated outside of our control and your control, and that's the problem. And we have no control over the growth of the population in Northwest Arkansas when it comes to the voter population, and we've experienced that the last 10 years. You're dealing with an operation here. This commission is the least trouble for the quorum court of any. The only time we come to you is when the state says you must get this approved by your quorum court to move forward. So you approve a document that we present, and then we go away. You don't see us every month. You don't see us every 6 months. You don't see us every year increasing our budget leaps and bounds. We work very closely to the budget. We have no reason to have excess dollars anywhere. We only budget what we need. If we don't spend a dollar, then it certainly goes back. But when you get money back from us, it's because we've charged these fees to the cities and areas that we hold special elections for. So we get a little reprieve there. We have to budget it in, we spend it, and then they give it back, and so there we have excess in the budget at the end of the year for that reason. But our budget changes every 2 years. We have big years, we have little years. But we're never any trouble. We don't come in. This is the first in the lives of everyone sitting in this room that this quorum court has had to address the need to fund equipment. Now, caveat to that is $25,000, in 2010. But our operation is truly and truly insignificant when it comes to the operation of the county. And it's by design. We're here to do a job that we're mandated to do and to work with you folks in the very best way we can to do it as efficiently as we can possibly do it and then go away. So when you look at it from our perspective, maybe it helps. I don't know. But if I were sitting in your chair and I'd been here 10 years and I'd never seen this request come before me, I'd probably have a lot of questions myself. And especially if I had very little background to understand the process that we go through at the Election Commission. Let me go on to say this. 20-odd years that we've been in the election process in Fayetteville. When I say we, my family, we've seen elections many, 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 many times. And without a doubt, they are run as efficiently, as accurately as they possibly can based on the equipment, the time frames, and all that go with that of the time of the election. We are antiquated in our process at this time, whether we like it or not, we as a body. It's the nature of the beast. It's a lot of money, Tom. We said that in the beginning, and I want you to know we have gone with a fine-tooth comb and a sharp pencil to everything we've been asked to present to you. There's not an ounce of fat in our budget anywhere. If we can't get it to this degree, then we can't function. I mean, that's plain and simple. We can struggle, but we can't function. And it's going to cost you about $180,000 extra by delaying the approving of the budget as we presented it here. And that doesn't get rid of the $400,000 obligation. So we gotta work together on this thing, and we're all in this together. So let's put our shoulder to the wheel and go to work. That's all I ask. And we would certainly appreciate your strong support in our budget process. Thank you. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Bill. J.P. Lundstrom.
Well, just to respond a little bit to what you're saying, I've had a little bit of experience with the Election Commission. I've been here 9 years. My son served on it for about 20 or 21 years. I've had a few conversations with him about it in the back rooms. Well, lucky for him, we didn't have him behind the tool shed. But
Yeah.
when you come in here and you increase the number of sites you're going to have an election at, you increase poll workers and so forth, you're increasing what it costs the county to do it. Now, I have the same problem you do with the state dumping this stuff on us. That's where I agree with J.P. Dennis. The conversation I had with Mr. Zega was about corners. We should be able to charge the cities a corners fee because we keep reducing, they keep annexing in all the tax money, but we keep all the services that we have to render. So our reserves and our money keeps dwindling as time goes by because they start getting the tax money and we still have the machines to buy and so forth. We had something else just the other day that the state quit paying for. Happens all the time. And we need to get to work harder on my daughter-in-law and some other people that are down there to get some laws passed to correct some of this stuff. I mean, it's important.
No doubt.
We're sending a ton of money to the state, just like we do to the counties and cities and everybody else. But that's what I object to about government growing every day, because you can't quit paying these stupid taxes, and they just keep getting bigger and bigger and more of them. And I appreciate the job the Election Commission does. They've always done a good job, although I get aggravated every election night because I can't get the returns on Elm Springs. They come in like 3 days later.
You will get them faster this
Yeah.
time.
Come help count.
It'll make that $420,000 worth every cent.
That's
won't
right.
Getting
It
that.
will.
Anyway, thank you all very much.
J.P. Bowman.
I think you guys have made a real strong case for this situation. And I want to make a motion, we move ahead and approve this as presented. Oh, don't need to do that? Okay. Okay, already approved. Okay, well, you know where I stand on it.
Okay. J.P. Patterson.
This is one of the things that comes along ever since I've been on this court, and I've been on here 13 years, that you just put you in a position you don't like to be in. This will be the most expensive election we have ever had next year. And it'll be represented and paid for out of the taxpayers' money. We represent the county, and the rural part of the county has a lot to do with getting places to vote and all of this. And we'll be operating with the smallest percentages of people that will vote in the county ever, because we're getting smaller. We're down. We went from 22.5% down to 18, and in 2020 we're going to go down again. And it makes our job harder as well as yours, because we have all these people out here. We're trying to do a budget. We're operating with smaller percentages of tax money than we have ever operated. That will change again in 2020. So somewhere it has to be where there's some changes made, and I don't know when that'll be. But when I come on the court, it was in February 2003 that the state owed us the tax money for June the year before. Now that has got a lot better, but at times we feel like we've been abused because we're just pushed to the back. I know there's a lot of counties out here with your situation, over in the Delta and places like that, their population didn't grow, so they had plenty of money coming for machines because they already had the voters for the last 40 years. They had more 40 years ago than they got now. But anyway, so it puts us in kind of a stressful situation, as well as it does everybody involved. We just need to send better people down to the state to represent the citizens of the state, in my opinion. I mean, they skipped you 1 4-year term, which would have helped. I don't know how many thousand that would be, but that's quite a little bit of money right there.
That's it.
Just disregarded it. It's like, oh, that's too bad. I'm sorry your money went to the other 74 counties. At least everybody got a little piece of it. So I'm gonna vote for it, and, but it does, people need to be aware that, it's not all just the easiest thing we ever do up here, because we're dealing with a smaller percentage of the taxes that comes into the county it changes every 10 years. And it's going down rapidly. I don't know where it'll be 10 years from now, but I can imagine it'll be down around 14%, maybe 13. Anyway, thank you for what you do. I'm gonna vote for you.
Thank you.
I'm going to,
If I might, I appreciate the situation you're in, and I'd just like to point out that Washington County is not the only county that got stuck in this position.
Well, I'm sure the other,
Benton County, same thing. They've had to go to their court in court, and the election commission had to.
I'm sure
ask
all
them
of
for
the
money.
counties that grew a lot
Exactly. Sebastian County, same thing.
got pinched a little bit. Our case is quite a little bit, 400 and some thousand, but anyway. Thank you.
I'm going to take a personal privilege here. I handled elections for 26 years. When I first handled elections, we did it by actually voting in a book, writing them in. Have I watched a lot of progressive growth? And to tell me that we have 80,000 people voting, I think that is an absolute awesome problem to have. I just want to say that. Thank you very much. I think our questions have all come to an end. We've already voted on your budget earlier. Don't think we need to take another vote unless you have something else to add or anyone else has got something to add. I think we'll move on to the next thing on the agenda.
Judge.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go right ahead, J.P. Cochran.
Yes, thank you, Judge. I want to thank you for coming back tonight. I realize it's an imposition to come back and rehash our budget. It does refresh our memory. We did have someone with a different understanding of what it is, and I hope you understand our position as stewards of the county's money, why we brought you back. So unless somebody raises the issue to reconvene on the number, I think your budget is going to stand as we originally approved. Thank you for coming tonight.
Jennifer, did you have a comment?
No, I just want to say thank you. I'll see you guys all Thursday.
Okay. Thank you guys very much. Have a good evening. The next thing we have on the agenda is the Ozark Regional Transit. Mr. Lundstrom.
Well, a few years ago, we were given $25,000 a year to the Ozark Regional Transit. And when they passed the half-cent sales tax statewide, I believe it's half-cent, isn't it? We increased that to 120. I think now it's 123,000. I personally would like to see it reduced to the 23,000 or 25,000 that we originally gave them. But I wanted to bring this up and see how the court responds to it and get your opinion on it. Thank you, Judge.
J.P. Madison.
Thank you, Madam Judge. I'm glad you're here tonight.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to speak strongly in favor of this. I was actually, once the half-cent sales tax money started coming to the county, I was actually the one that proposed using the money. We were able to dedicate a route out into rural parts of the county as a result of this funding. If we were to reduce it to the amount suggested, that route would be gone.
Yes, ma'am. That route would be gone right away. Starting January 1st, that route would no longer run. The $122,970 that's being offered, first of all, by the way, Joel Gardner, Ozark Regional Transit Executive Director. I apologize. The $122,970 that's been allocated through Washington County Quorum Court is matched with another $25,000 from Lincoln, Prairie Grove, Farmington, Greenland, and West Fork. Each of those cities has their own portions that they go ahead and put towards this to come together and actually build the about $145,000, $147,000 that it takes to run one of these routes. 14 hours a day, 5 days a week, and also the associated demand response and paratransit, which is these smaller vehicles that run throughout the county and help people with physical disabilities or people that have ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act qualifying events. So that money combined from the county and from the cities runs this program. If the county pulls the funds, I can tell you hands down, that route will no longer be in effect, and all of the other routes or the demand response and paratransit that's associated with it would be diminished significantly. The cost of running the demand response is 4 or 5 times higher than it is the fixed route, just because we're moving people more in bulk. Yes, it's a larger vehicle that has lower gas mileage, but we're getting more bang for our buck. And when we go back out to the smaller vehicles, there is no precedent set on who gets a priority because we lose the ADA 3/4 mile corridor that gives preferential treatment to people with disabilities. So then now it is on a first come, first served basis. And I think we really start setting ourselves back a good number of years in how we are performing transportation in Northwest Arkansas. For the folks that are using it, we've got education and employment are 2 of the biggest things that people are using these routes for. And they're moving from those outer cities along the 62 and 71 corridor, moving into Fayetteville, and they're dispersing all the way up into Bentonville from there.
Well, one thing I want to give a little history here about is the sales tax was passed in 12. I was trying to remember the year.
Yes, ma'am.
So that year, what happened, this court, with some controversy, put on the ballot in May of that year a 1/4 cent sales tax that would have been dedicated to transit.
Correct.
And it did not pass. The voters disapproved that. But part of the reason that people opposed that tax was because coming up in November of that year, this 1/2 cent statewide sales tax was on the ballot, and it was for more general transportation purposes. Among those was transit.
Yes, ma'am.
And the Northwest Regional Council,
Yes,
the Northwest Council came to us and said, really, we don't want you to do this 1/4 cent dedicated sales tax. We want you to wait until November and do this 1/2 cent sales tax, and then we will support you in having a small part of that money go to transit.
Yes, ma'am.
And then that's what happened. The voters declined it in May, the dedicated sales tax, but passed it in November of 2012 with one of the purposes being transit.
Yes, ma'am.
And so we then turned around, like I think a lot of the other cities did with the money they were getting from the sales tax proceeds, and put that money toward transit.
Yes, ma'am.
And we talk a lot about economic development and what we can do in the county for economic development purposes. Having transit options is very critical to economic development. If you're poor and you need a job, odds are you don't have a car. And a lot of times elected officials are the first ones to say, well, they need to get a job. They need to go to work and, pay their taxes. Well, they can't get to work if they don't have a car. And having transit is one way that people are able to get to jobs. And when companies look at coming in to a city or a part of Washington County, they want to know about transportation options so that workers can actually get to work. I won't say that we have a full-blown transit system.
No, ma'am.
We're in infancy stages still.
Yes,
but
ma'am.
if we're ever hopeful for truly being a region of economic development and having companies want to locate here, there has to be a public transit option. And so this is one small way that we can kind of help boost the county along. And I urge the members to look at, really, this is, in the grand scheme of things, this is a small amount of money. It's a part of a sales tax that this was one of the dedicated purposes for it. And it helps so many people. And again, I'll say that same, what I said about the Election Commission. This impacts citizens in the cities that we don't always have an opportunity to provide a direct impact to them. And so I'm fully in support of this. I think we should leave it alone in the budget. And I'm glad you're here to answer questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
J.P. Ecke.
Thank you, Madam Judge. I agree wholeheartedly with Justice Madison just expressed. I want to honor our veterans, and I see our veterans using it, especially those that just come back from service. I see mamas and papas using it. I see the disabled using it, mentally handicapped to get to work, lifestyles, uses this program. And I know you're a veteran, and I know you support the veterans, but I see them because when they come off their tour, I've seen them at the post office when they said, I just got back 3 weeks ago. I don't have a car. And they're at the post office going to Decision Point, trying to go here, trying to go there. And if they didn't have this transportation service available to them, we would be throwing them under the bus instead of offering them the bus to take them where they need to go. I would like all of us here to support those veterans and to support the mamas and papas that use this service. And there's people who are epileptic and they can't drive. And they need to be able to get out and go grocery shopping, go to the post office, and be able to get around this county. So I support what you're doing, and wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Deputy Lundstrom.
It would be a little easier for me to support it if it was going south into the unincorporated part of the county. Where it's running right now is basically through Prairie Grove, Lincoln, Farmington, south part of Fayetteville, and Elkins, right?
No, sir. It actually heads down to Greenland and West Fork.
Okay.
We don't go out to Elkins.
Greenland and West Fork, but
yes, sir.
So I would like to see these cities pay for it because they're basically the ones getting the benefit of it. Just like Springdale and Fayetteville and Rogers and Bentonville pay a lot more money than the county does even. I think Springdale pays 200 and some thousand, don't they?
Yes, sir.
So I would like to see these cities, I mean, Prairie Grove and Lincoln and them are not tiny little cities. I mean, they've got some revenue stream coming in, but the cumulative, they're only paying $25,000.
Yes, sir.
Which is not very much money. But the unincorporated part of the county is not getting very much service out of the bus at all. I'm talking about a way, you know, I know you will send a van down there to pick somebody up if they're injured or whatever. But I watch these buses very closely, as you know, and I think mass transit is a fine thing where the usage and so forth is sufficient to even halfway support it. But I watch these buses constantly, and they're just flat empty every time I look at them. I've been up at NWAC and watched them. I've been at the hospital and watched them. I've been at the mall and watched them. I just cannot see riders on these buses, especially servicemen.
And if I may suggest, sir, I get that. For the last 11 years of my life, by the way, I do thank you for your support of the veterans. I'm a 20-year Marine myself, so thank you very much for all that support. Everything I do, I keep my Marines in mind for. But I've had that argument of I see empty buses. And not to be... the Marine steps out in me and says, well, between 2 o'clock in the morning and 4 o'clock in the morning, I see Thompson empty also. Does that mean we should roll up Thompson in the middle of the night and not allow anybody on it? I see the trail that's empty on a rainy day. Does that mean that the trail that we've invested so much into for our community should be rolled up on a rainy day? No, there are times where buses will be empty. There are times where streets will be empty. But we still need to maintain those things, sir. We need to maintain those streets. We need to maintain the trails. We need to maintain all of the times that we are not doing things so that when those times do come up, we're ready to rock and roll. It's the same thing with fire departments and police departments. If I could do a study, I bet you I could find a certain period of the day where the fire department is not functional, where somebody's not having a call out there. And I'll say, well, 90% of the time between 1:15 and 4:15, we're not getting as many phone calls, so we need to shut down the fire department during that period of time. But all it takes is that one time for that one call to come through where the fire department is needed, and then we'll say, oh my gosh, we should have it out there all the time. I mean, I'm not asking that we run this at 2 in the morning when I know everybody's asleep. What I'm asking is that we continue to fund this program during the times that people are using it, and they're moving from Prairie Grove to Fayetteville, from Fayetteville to Prairie Grove to Lincoln to all of the other communities that are smaller and within the county. And sir, I'll tell you, this is something that is growing and developing in Northwest Arkansas, and development in Northwest Arkansas really revolves around a good transit system and the ability, especially for this generation coming up, to move around without getting in their own cars. So,
well, I think this is the Marine Corps coming out in me too.
Yes, sir.
Semper Fi.
Yes, sir.
But anyway, I just believe that the people that are using it the most ought to be paying for it. I'm not talking about cutting the funding. I'm talking about still giving $25,000 for the county's portion of it. But I would like to see those cities that you're driving through paying a more proportionate amount of that. That's my argument, is that I think the county is contributing more to it than their results are.
We started the initiative 2 years ago with 20 for transit, and that was 20% of the turnback funds going for transit. Springdale stepped into that, Fayetteville more than stepped into that, and then we came to Washington County, and Washington County said, well, we'll do 10% for transit. And I can tell you right now, that followed right down into Prairie Grove, Farmington, Lincoln, Greenland, and West Fork, and they said, okay, if Washington County's doing 10%, then 10% will do just fine for us. I can't tell you that was their verbatim, but that's the feeling that I had gotten, is that, okay, Washington County is our leading group here on this route. So if they're going to do 10%, then we'll do 10%. If Washington County 2 years ago had done 20%, I'll bet you those other communities would also have done 20%.
Well, I know when your predecessor came looking for his quarter of a cent, we had this meeting around this horseshoe here, and the ex-mayor was here talking about it, and they were estimating that quarter of a cent would probably produce about $1 million a year, where it actually produces $8 million. He was looking for $16 million a year. That's what he was asking for.
That's way too much.
Which I figured up to $140,000 a day, 365 days a year, for the same bus line that you're running, probably more efficiently than he was, with a whole lot less money than that.
Yes, sir.
So that kind of set a bad taste in my mouth, for the bus line start.
Yes, sir.
But after coming out and visiting with you, I do respect you as an individual and the
Yes,
job
sir.
you're doing and all that. But I just personally feel like there's a county paying a little bit more than they should, and these cities paying a little bit less than they should, because it's mainly their people that are riding that bus. And West Fork, that's a tiny little town. They probably can't pay much. So our $25,000 or $30,000 or $40,000, whatever it might end up talking about. But I'm not going to make a motion to cut it, which I could, and just see what the court's view is. I would rather see, if there's that much interest in it, see somebody else make that motion to see what it is. My feeling is there's probably not enough here to change it anyway, but we'll see. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
J.P. Harbison.
I definitely support the transit system. It's necessary. It's the backbone to develop a transit system. You can't develop one unless you have buses out there running.
Yes, ma'am.
And, we have to educate our people to ride the transit, and it's gradually happening. We have a lot of people in Fayetteville. We're having a few people in West Fork and Greenland.
Yes, ma'am.
But I think it's necessary. I'm glad that we have $122,970 that we can give you.
Thank you.
And, I support it wholly because it's economic development for the county.
Yes, ma'am.
Because these people that don't have jobs or for some reason cannot drive can get jobs and have transportation available. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
J.P. Dennis.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I got some of my questions answered just in listening. But at the same time, go over with me one more time on the corridors. I mean, where are the routes? The routes are just 62 and 71 corridors?
This particular route that Washington County funds is directly traveling from West Fork straight north on 71 to Greenland. It ties into Lot 56 with two of our other routes and also the university routes. does transfers, then it heads westbound to Farmington through Prairie Grove and out to Lincoln. That one route right there, we call it the Route 620, is what is funded by Washington County and the smaller cities. Now, in association with that, we have the demand response model. In the old days, it used to be called dial-a-ride. So that's the model that we use to pick people up individually that have ADA qualifying events that don't allow them to walk to a bus or upstairs, that type of thing. So this particular route that we're talking about that is being funded is the Route 620. Yes, sir.
So, like, the other small towns, could they join up if they wanted to?
When we're talking about the other small towns, which ones are we?
Elkins, Tawnytown?
Elkins, yes. Tawnytown, yes. But on those particular routes, I would personally look at something and say, okay, we're going to connect Springdale through Tawnytown out to Siloam Springs. So now we would get all of those involved. Then we would also get the casino out there involved because there's casino workers. Then we get John Brown University involved because there's college students. And then maybe even Ecclesia College because there's college students there. We cannot just build a route because of the cost. Running out to Elkins and back, that would be a $140,000 burden on Elkins on an annual basis that I don't know that they could support. But if we partnered with other communities and or businesses, and this is what we've been doing in Springdale this year, is experimenting with the businesses. I want you to say experimenting. We've been running trials with the businesses where we are actually getting industries now to step up and start supporting routes for public transportation. We've got a trial route in Rogers with Ozark Mountain Poultry. They are fully funding it. It is public transportation. And we've got one in Springdale, which is George's Chicken. They're fully funding it, and it is public transportation. So we are building coalitions of other supporters other than just the taxpayers. Yes, sir.
J.P. Cochran.
Thank you, Judge. On this route that we're funding,
Yes, sir.
what is the fee that you charge each passenger?
$1.25 per one-way trip, sir.
Okay, and that's wherever they get off. If they start out in Lincoln or Farmington and get into Lot 56, it's $1.25.
Yes, sir.
Okay. What was the revenue on that route for the past year?
We had 5,000. I cannot tell you the exact.
From the hip,
we've
okay,
had
from the hip.
4,482 riders on that route in the past year. Okay. Some of those riders may have paid the $1.25. Some of those riders may have paid $30 for a monthly pass. Okay. So to actually attribute each ride, we're getting on an average 80 cents per verified ride. So 4,482 times 0.8 is what our revenue is.
And when they transfer at Lot 56, do they pay another fee to go somewhere else?
No, sir. Transfers are free.
Okay. Do you know the amount that the 5 cities contribute to the program?
Ballpark estimates, Lincoln, $2,000, Prairie Grove, $8,000, Farmington, $8,000, Greenland, $4,000, West Fork, $5,000, I believe is what they were.
So what do we got here? 10?
25,000.
24, 25,000.
Yes, sir.
And we're doing basically 4 to 1.
Yes, sir.
Because, 23, 24,000 is something we were already doing to take care of our citizens out for individual runs.
Actually, when the county was, before the 24 Transit Initiative and the 10% that we're looking at with this 122,970, the county was doing $25,000 a year.
Right.
So the county was doing $25,000 a year. The smaller cities, there was no initiative to actually get them on board. In the past 2 years, we've developed the relationship with the county for the 122,970, and we've also developed relationships with the smaller towns to go ahead and start contributing to the fixed routes.
You mentioned the possibility of taking Route West through Tawnytown.
Yes, sir.
And going all the way to the state line.
Yes, sir.
Would you be able to cross the line?
Oh, yes, sir.
How do you do that? You're not regulated just within our county, or because I know Benton County participates in the overall program, so you could take your portion to get to Siloam.
Correct.
Yes,
We, as the fixed route public transportation provider in Northwest Arkansas, we're tasked with two things. First of all, covering the entire urbanized area. Secondly, of course, we are the 5311, or the rural transportation provider for Northwest Arkansas, as designated by Arkansas Highway and Transportation Department. Now, we can actually develop fixed routes that will cross a state line so long as we stay on that fixed route. We cannot be on intermittent stops throughout an area. We have to have actual developed fixed route locations, timed stops, everything else. That allows us to get across that state line.
Right, okay. I was kind of wondering if you're going to drop them off at the state line and
No, sir.
walk a couple blocks in the rain.
No, sir. I've developed interstate, intrastate routes on fixed routes in 3 states now.
Okay. The probability of the 5 cities contributing to a greater amount in this next budget cycle, what do you think? Will they stay the same?
The definition of hope is the happiness of good things to come. I hope.
Ain't it the truth?
I hope that they will actually increase their funding.
Okay. Well, when we last discussed this, I don't remember the vote on this one item. I'm torn, honestly, between, because I do see a lot of empty routes. And it very well may be the time of the day, but I do get out during the day as well, and I've never seen more than half a dozen people on one of the blue buses. And it's kind of frustrating. I know that the buses that are running up and down I-49 are full to capacity at times because of class schedule, and I also understand that NWAC is funding that segment there fully, I believe. Is that correct?
Actually, 50%.
50%?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I would expect that there's a pretty good amount of people, since they're buying a monthly pass. We got several of them that are picking up at Lot 56, and they're either going into the U of A or they're going up to NWAC.
Yes, sir.
So, we've got a student population there. That is kind of my deciding point, that I'll support what we've already done, although I'm frustrated that we don't get as much bang for our buck. When John Pumphrey was sitting in your chair, he was asked a question by my fellow JP, Mr. Lindstrom, and he said, how much does it cost to run, one fare? And he said, $15. And he said, well, charge $15 and you won't be running a deficit. I know that the rates are quite low and that you give special deals for folks that are truly in need, and they are I'm going to say, validated or verified. What's the right word? But you understand what I mean. They're actually checked out to make sure that it's not somebody like me.
I call it an ADA qualifying event.
There you go. And that is a good thing, because some folks do need, as Justice Madison, they need a ride to work so they can get a leg up on life and maybe buy that car. And then, they may still use the bus a little bit, and they may encourage others to use it. And I want to commend you for the growth that you've brought in since your beginning with us a couple years ago.
Yes, sir.
It's very good. It's very heartening to know, although we are spending a lot of money, our taxpayers' money, it is something that, as Justice Madison said, something people will look at us and look to us to provide if they're going to bring the company in here and build us more jobs.
Yes, sir.
And it's also good for our local economy. I know the route that you've got for George's is going to help them a lot. That brings in, because a lot of their workers are very low-wage workers, and owning an extra car is not in the cards for them.
Yes, sir.
So, thank you.
Yes, sir.
For bringing this program along as far as you have. I still think there's more you can do.
Yes, sir, there is. There always is.
Best wishes in doing just that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Judge.
JP Sue Madison.
Thank you, Madam Judge. Members, I think we all know that Northwest Arkansas has an embarrassing number of homeless and borderline homeless people in our area. Poor and borderline homeless people will gravitate to the cities for these services. I mean, they could live with family at Nob Hill, they could live with family out the other side of Elkins, or they could live with family out on Harmon Road. And I know people who fit those descriptions. But they can't get anywhere from those locations. I'm on the board of a nonprofit that owns Washington Plaza Apartments here in Fayetteville. There's a bus that comes to Washington Plaza Apartments. It picks up on Dean Street. And a lot of people will live there because it's on a bus route. And for single mothers, for poor people, you can't imagine how valuable that is. It means they can get to the health department. There's a bus stop at the county health department. They may have to make a transfer. And traveling on a bus with 2 young children is really a scheduling issue. I think they may have to carry car seats. It may take them all day, but I think we're all better off if we've got a pregnant mother going to the health department and getting seen by a doctor and being on WIC. We're better off when her children are going there to get their immunizations and their well child checkups and being counseled on nutrition for those children. We're all better off when they have that access. And if they're living out at Nob Hill or they're living on Harmon Road, they got to find some Grammy that can take them and probably doesn't have car seats in her car. So this is a service that in some ways benefits all of society because we want children to have access to our health department. And I'm just glad that the transit is there to help people like that. And it is hard to ride the bus if you've got children and you're poor. And there are times of the year that they're thankful there are free passes and they take advantage of it. So I'm certainly glad to see the support seems to be dropping for cutting this budget. Thank you.
JP Ussery. I'm sorry, Lloyd.
Good evening. Thank you, Judge. I support bus transportation. I'm a special ed teacher, so, I understand the ADA and all that. But just please help me understand one thing, and I want to realize, am I making this too simple or what? But are you saying Route 620, that the county is given $122,970 to it, and that in 2014 we had 4,482 participants? Is that what you did?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So that comes out to $27.44 each rider, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. I needed to make sure that I wanted to
Yes,
understand that.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any comments to change this budget, or do we want to leave it as stand? I think, yes, J.P. Hockman.
Thank you, Judge. Unless someone wants to make a motion, then I will thank you for coming again tonight.
Thank you,
I know
sir.
It's an imposition. I appreciate reviewing some of the concerns that we have, and I wish you well on doubling up those numbers.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Judge.
Ladies and gentlemen, have a wonderful evening, and thank you very
Joel.
much.
We appreciate you.
Yes, ma'am.
The next thing we have on the agenda is the IT department. J.P. Ussery.
Thank you. I asked that John come back and talk to us.
He may have stepped out to the, I tell you what, let's take a break before we do his. Come on, everybody get up and stretch their legs. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started on the last thing on our agenda. IT department, Mr. J.P. Ussery.
Not again.
Thank you. I asked John to come back because we voted down his request for things on the budget. And to me, I think part of our responsibility is to invest in the future. And John brought some things forward that I think will be a great investment for the county, and I think they'll actually, if we spend a little money, we'll save a lot. So I asked him to come back, and if he could explain one more time the two major things that you had. The first one was investing in infrastructure, and then the second one was personnel that should save us a considerable amount of money. So if you could address those things for us, I would appreciate it.
You bet. I'd be glad to. If we can put the fiber connection in between the north and south campus, I expect that we may save $54,000 a year with that. So that's almost cutting a lot of our internet in half. Cox will have to sharpen their pencil on it, but our long-term investment will save $1 million of the life of this fiber. We also asked for 2 backup devices, one on the north campus and one at the south campus. I'm at 80% capacity on backups. What does that mean? It means that anything, if it's added to the system, will exceed the capacity for us to be able to back up. Failure to buy backup devices means next year I'm either going to have to come back to you and beg for more hardware, or I'm going to have to start saying, there's certain things I just can't back up, but we're going to have to make decisions on what we back up at the various different offices. So without that, we won't be able to back those things up. One of the offices that's putting a lot of information online right now is the prosecuting attorney's office. So as they put their case management stuff in here, that increased from that 80% towards that 100% mark. And all these things are important and are regulated by the state for us to have backups with that. So there's a significant savings there in that we'll be able to continue to back up all the documents and storage that we need for the next few years with that. And then we asked for 2 people to come on board in a programming department to try to help us. There's 2 projects that we immediately want to take on. One project is SunGuard, which I think some of you have been familiar with. But SunGuard was a financial package that was put in that was supposed to interact and interconnect all the offices such as HR, purchasing, and all this. And it's done a fairly decent job of connecting these things together. But here it is 5 years later. They've got a new product that they want to upgrade to. That upgrade next year will cost us close to $500,000. Today, this is 5 years later since it's been put in, we still have components within that they can't, and they haven't got to work. They will not get it working. By building it in-house, we can customize this application too. Every time we call SunGuard for a specialized report, it's $534 per report, regardless whether it took them seconds or not. But we can customize these things based on the department needs. And in a lot of cases, this information is all shared. For example, all the employees' names, the elected officials' names. Those are all shared in HR, comptrollers, and purchasing. Having it interact with each other won't have to have a lot of data reentry. HR uses 3 programs to be able to keep all of her data and information about what our employees have, do, insurance benefits, etc. By doing this project, we'll be able to save the $500,000, and they have an annual maintenance fee of $35,000 that we'll be able to save. And the big part that we'll save is to be able to have the ability to customize things within the program at the request of the comptroller's office, purchasing office, and the HR office. Now, while every department utilizes SunGuard because everybody has a P card or have to have a purchase order, so the end user has a process they have to fill out, and it could be simplified and made much easier for them. We also have another project that was outsourced some time ago that's costing us between $45,000 and $50,000 a year. We'll be able to accomplish that the first year and not get out of the ballpark. Bringing that home then would keep us $50,000 a year in savings. And as I stated last time, I have 6 projects that if we can get these 2 persons and we get these programs in, I can save approximately $1 million a year. And over 5 years, $5 million will be saved. My employee cost for those 2 persons will be $127,506 per year, and that's their total compensation package with that. First year, we paid for this. The second year, we'll continue to pay for it. And the more of these applications and things that we can customize within the county and provide, we save money. The employees add efficiency. They are able to get their information much faster, as we talked about a couple of programs in the past. And not only that, the reporting that they have is much more instant. And in some cases, we can even put this information on the website so for much more transparency. In other words, I want to report the pothole somewhere. I can report that. It goes to the road department. They can look at the picture that they submitted and look at the GAO coordinates, know exactly where it's at. So those are the types of savings that we'll have be there. In our department, we're always seen as a cost department. But really, truly, for this county, we save money by supporting all of the other departments. We support every single one of them 24/7. Last night was a rough night. Lots of storms. Did our batteries hold up? We lost 2 batteries last night and had to be replaced today. You guys are coming in about the time we were replacing those. Nothing happened. But because we have the software that can alert us on some of this stuff, we're able to keep us up and going. Without the backup devices, without the fiber, we will continue to have our internet prices increase. We already talked about it next year. Cox has already told us. But as we need more bandwidth between north and south, because as more files are being transferred, more information is being transferred up, then we're going to have to ask Cox for additional bandwidth. By putting in this fiber, they call them strands. So inside the fiber, there's strands. And these strands, little glass tubes, I can put 6 in there. So I can go from right now, we have 100 megs. If I go with these 6, I can get up to 10 gigs. So I would not have to go back to ask Cox, hey, I need another 100 megs, I need another a gig, or what am I going to need? We just light the pipe by putting in a device in the switches and get it going.
J.P. Madison.
Thank you, Judge. I kind of want to understand some of the specifics a little better. What's the cost of the fiber optic is separate from the 2 servers, the backup
Correct.
servers. Okay, so what's the cost of the fiber optic?
The fiber optics is $150,000.
Okay, and is that a one-time cost?
That's a one-time cost. Now, guys, one other thing to keep in caution, this is to get it buried. So that'll help protect it from some of the weather, ice storms, snow and stuff. They is a company called Cablevision that we'll ask to do the project. They do it for Cox. They'll get the easements and the right-of-ways, and that's the cost of the fiber. And that was their ballpark cost. It may come underneath that with their sharpen their pencil, but
So is that, so the $150,000 includes buying easements then?
yes.
Okay,
And they'll take care of it, they say.
okay, so they've given us that number.
Yes.
Are there any other, what are there any other maintenance or annual costs that would come thereafter?
There should not be unless we have to move it.
Okay. And then you said that you anticipate a savings of $54,000 per year. I was curious what the basis for that was.
That will be taken away from Cox, that link between us and the South Campus.
Okay, so we're basically putting in our own line?
Mm-hmm.
And do we have to maintain that then?
Well, once it's put in place, okay, the fiber today, we don't have to take care of it. Once it's in place, it's in place. Unless somebody comes and cuts it or a backhoe was to rip it out, we should not have to do anything else with it.
Call before you dig, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're basically talking about taking a cost, an annual cost that we're paying Cox and changing it. Are there any other savings? I'm trying to sort of do a cost-benefit analysis. There was someone here last night, I think everybody knows Bob, that was sitting where Dallas is sitting, but he asked a lot of questions about cost-benefit analysis, sort of what are the costs, what are the benefits of this? If we don't put this in place, the alternative is we just continue to pay Cox.
Yeah. And we'll be at their mercy as far as the cost for that. Because if we need to increase it, they're going to have a cost for that. And at some point, the way that their network is designed, they may have to move us to a different fiber line and some of those. And we'll be the ones that usually bear that cost.
And so what's the business case for doing this then?
Business case, we're going to save that amount of money. This line is for 20 years. It should have a life expectancy of 20 years. And I can turn up, in other words, have a lot more bandwidth capabilities than we currently have without having to go to Cox and say, oh, how much more for more bandwidth.
Well, are there things we're currently not able to do?
We're having a lot of problems at night with our backups, getting them pushed up here. And that's why we want or need the backup device down there. But we're taking this pipe and we're including backups during the day. You got your phone traffic, you got your internet traffic, and other things for applications. So an application server's up here, employees down at the South Campus use it.
Wait, you confused me there then. Are we talking about these are alternatives? Because if you're talking about, you're saying you're having trouble backup, one of your proposals is to put a backup server there, I understood.
Right.
So if you put the backup server there, then you alleviate that part of
Alleviate
the
some of it,
pipeline.
but I still will have a storage problem with the total amount of storage for backup. I have a big bucket that's 80% full. It's here. If I put a device down there, then now I'll have 2 buckets that'll be 40% full.
Okay, well, I'm confused though, because I thought you said that one of the reasons why the current Cox line is inadequate is because at night you're having trouble doing backup. If we put a backup server there, do you also need the fiber optic? Because that
Yes.
seems duplicative.
Yes. It's not just the backups that's causing these problems. During the day, we're dropping packets too, because we're right at our limit at that.
Okay, talking normal person's talk.
I got a garden hose, I need a fire hose.
No, I mean, like, tell me, like, practically speaking, what does that mean? Not an analogy, not a packets, but like the end user in the courthouse, what are they experiencing as a result?
So they're experiencing sluggishness with some of their applications. So for example, in the collector's office, this is their busiest month. So their machines will be going slower with their application. Takes a lot longer for it to complete.
Well, tell me how a connection to the South Campus alleviates something in the
That
collector's
was an
office.
example.
Well, no.
Yeah. So I have a small garden hose. The backup part of it, going through the garden hose eliminates. But the pipe that I have today has lots of traffic that comes across it.
No, I understand that we're talking about increasing the size of the hose. I get that. But I don't understand how a connection to the South Campus affects somebody in the collector's office.
It didn't. That's an example that you said, how would somebody in this office see, in this courthouse?
Okay, well, I'm trying to figure out the upgrade that we're saying that the current pipeline to the South Campus is inadequate. I'm trying to figure out how this upgrade, what problems are people experiencing because of that?
Yes. Some of them from the South Campus come up here for their applications. So with those applications, they're experiencing sluggishness and slowness. Phone calls are impacted with it because they come up here for their connections.
Okay. Well, let me ask you about the employee cost. You said, I understood what you said, these two employees would be dedicated to writing software. Okay. And we're looking at trying to rewrite something like SunGuard in-house.
Correct.
It seems like a pretty tall task. What would be the time frame for being able to write software that sophisticated?
We anticipate the first project was the other website stuff would take us about 8 months. We figure that the SunGuard replacement will take us about 2 years.
So the cost savings, because the SunGuard cost savings was $500,000
For the product plus the
plus
35,000.
35 years. So we wouldn't be looking at realizing that for another 2 years.
Correct.
At least. Okay. And then you mentioned another software piece you said was a savings of around $50,000 a year, and I'm not sure I knew what that was. Is that?
That was one of the products that's been outsourced for the assessor's office. That's the Data Scout, or so you go out and you get your titles, your deeds, your taxes, all the information.
So it was just a few years ago that we had that in-house and we outsourced it to Data Scout at considerable expense.
Mm-hmm.
And we're now talking about, again, rewriting it on our own and bringing it back in?
We already had it written. It just needs to have some modifications. The reason it got outsourced was they didn't want to afford to buy the software that was required to do that. The new assessor has asked for us to bring it back in. One is it would save us this money every year. The other is any customizations that they need to make, they can ask us and we can make it on the fly. A lot of the vendors, when you ask for an enhancement, they may or may not do it for a while, and they may do it at a cost. So by bringing this back in-house, we'll be able to save that money.
I seem to recall that Data Scout cost us a lot of money, though, so I'm just questioning the wisdom of having done all that investment and then changing so quickly to bring it in-house. Do you recall what the initial investment was?
I don't. No.
Okay. You mentioned some other website stuff, I think, that the people would do. Tell me about that.
We have other projects that we'd like to do to bring back some of these outsourced software back in-house. In the assessor's office, we can bring in some of those, so we can do it in-house with those. I don't want to necessarily mention vendors because right now, until we agree that we're going to do this, I don't want to create a relationship with them that'll be negative.
So, going back to the bringing the Data Scout project in-house, how long do you anticipate that it would be before we could have that operational?
8 months.
Okay. But you said it was going to do the other website stuff for 8 months. I'm trying to figure out.
The Data Scout and what you're referring to the other site is the same thing.
Okay. Are there any other projects that you anticipate
Those
them
will be
doing?
the first two in the first year. And
Okay.
2 years.
Or maybe 3 if it's 8 months and then 2 years, right?
A lot of the Data Scout stuff, they get their data from us. So we already have it pretty much pieced into place, and we already have a lot of the framework around the application ready. So we just need to fix a few things, get things up. But we also want to reach out with the assessor to some of his customers to see how some of those customers like it. When we went from our product to the outsourced product, there was lots of complaints, and there's still complaints saying, well, I can't do this, or I don't know how to get this. We want to work with those customers so that we can get the product to what they need in their view. So a lot of that's going to be doing a little discovery with them.
I guess you mentioned 6 projects. I guess we've heard about 2 of them. What are the other 4?
The other 4 would be in the JDC and the court, and replace their juvenile program.
Okay.
And then some others are apprentice and ACT products.
I'm sorry, what?
ACT products.
Not like the college test, I'm assuming. So what is that?
It's the vendor's name.
Okay, and what do those do?
That's only 5.
So the apprentice is for the collector.
Okay.
ACT is for the assessor. Data Scout's for the assessor. SunGuard is for us, the entire county. And Right Track is for JDC. And then there's 2 parts to the Right Track. So there's the JDC part, and then there is the Juvenile Correction Center part.
And so the other 4 we would be looking at probably not starting for another 3 years, so.
Depending on how things work with the SunGuard, we could start that, because as you start putting these people together in a team, certain people are going to work on certain stages for this. And while one person may be working on this, another person can be working on another piece of a project. So.
Well, and this is not obviously my area of expertise, but it sort of seems like, I mean, I have gotten into SunGuard. Ms. Bollinger will remember a few times when I actually sat down at a computer and tried to figure out how to use it. It's complex. I sort of look at that and think, aren't we better off maybe paying somebody else to do this? Because this seems like a really sophisticated piece of software. It's like when I sit down at Microsoft Word, I don't for a minute think that it would be cheaper for me to hire somebody to write that software for me. There's sometimes it's just better to buy it. I realize it's expensive. I get that. $500,000 plus $35,000 a year is a lot, but.
You know, we hadn't got SunGuard to work in a lot of areas. Getting some of the framework that we've talked about when they first visited on SunGuard with some of the other projects that came forward or vendors, utilize a lot of the Microsoft products that we have accessible to us because of our budget. We have afforded the software to be able to get that. So the .NET framework in SharePoint would be the core of this. And a lot of these are modules that you customize. So while Word is a product that you can take out of the box and just click install and go next, 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 with these modules you take them out and you customize them for your specific needs. And you have an HR module, you could have a help desk module, all these modules, this framework that it comes with, then they have the ability to be able, the programmers go in, customize it to their needs.
Well, I think what my hesitation is I think it sounds great to think that we could replace all these expensive software packages with things we build in-house with 2 relatively inexpensive employees. I'm just kind of wondering, is it going to work? I mean, I hate to get in there and think like, oh, you know, we can't possibly duplicate SunGuard. That's my fear, that we get 3 years in and it's just a system we can't duplicate. We're better off paying somebody else to do it. I mean, how do you know that we can, I guess? I mean, we don't know who the people are because we obviously haven't hired them, but.
You know, it's kind of ironic in the sense that when we started with SunGuard, one of the big problems that we had was their programmers coming in and trying to understand our needs. So a lot of them, they came in, they didn't understand how county government worked. Well, wait a minute. We felt, and when I say we, the persons that were all in the project, thought that SunGuard should be able to come in here and go, all right, well, here's what you need to do, here's how you need to do it, etc. But really, what we had to do was get them to understand our processes. With having it in-house with us, we already understand some of these things, how they work, what works, and what we need to put in place. And working with the different departments, we'll come up with a workable solution. So a lot of times, though, we as IT had to interact with SunGuard extensively to ensure that we got what we wanted. Earlier you said the English, please. Sometimes we have to be able to talk to the techies.
Sure.
And we spent a huge amount of time with SunGuard trying to get them to do the things that we needed to do.
Well, but I guess I go back to my fear is, can we really do this?
Yes.
I mean, how do you know that? Because that's my fear. Is like, I don't think I could do this.
I've been in IT for a little over 20 years, and I've done these types of projects before. Putting the right people in place at the right time to do the project will work. We will get it successfully done. Will we have some stumbles along the way? Yes, guys, we will. We will in trying to interpret the things from the departments to make sure we're giving them the right things. I had somebody talk about the SunGuard and said it's 26 steps to do a P card. Well, that's just to enter in your information, who I dealt business with, how much money I paid. Can we make that better? Yes. Can we get the reports that we need? Yes. We got the expertise if we hire 2 more programmers to be able to have that. And we'll be able to do it.
I'm going to have to, I've got J.P. Lloyd, Harbison, Cochran, Bowman, and Usry. So if we can, I need to move on to let others, unless, are you still got things to?
Well, no, I was nearing the end.
Go ahead.
I think I'll just sort of wrap up by saying, I think the notion of savings is good. I feel like it's a little uncertain and it's a little far off for me right now. It sounds good. And, when you say $1 million a year, that sounds good. We're not going to be talking about saving $1 million a year for quite some time. And I think right now may not be the time to do that. That's what I'm worried about. I just have a lot of doubts about it. And then I'm not sure I really have a good feel for the fiber optic line expense, how that's really going to impact the day-to-day user. I didn't feel like I really got that. But I'll yield the floor since I've taken up my share of time. Thank you.
J.P. Lloyd.
Thank you, Judge. Good evening. Are there other counties putting on their own fiber line?
Yes. Benton County has their own.
When did they do that?
Oh, I think it was about 4 years ago. City of Bentonville's had their own fiber for...
City of Bentonville and
Yeah.
Benton County?
Yeah.
Both
and
have done that?
And I think they've had, theirs has been, 10, 15 years. City of Fayetteville has some of their own fiber. They also lease some fiber too. A lot of businesses have their own fiber as well.
Okay. And then are there other counties that are doing that Data Scout in-house?
Benton County does it in-house.
Benton County does?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Pulaski County does, but the other smaller counties don't have IT staffs normally to do that.
Okay. So my last question. So if you would do the Data Scout and the fiber line in-house and all that stuff, you would get rid of SunGuard completely, correct?
Yes. Now, we would have to keep SunGuard in some state for historical information, but as time went on, then we could get rid of it. By rid of it, meaning gone completely off the premise. During this time, once we bring up our product, we will not have to pay them support or any maintenance fees, because we'll just be able to go in and retrieve the reports that are currently there.
Okay. I guess I said that was the last question, but I do have one more. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay. Don't you feel like we've invested a lot in SunGuard by having them come up to the county standards, like you were saying, and learning the county things? I mean, haven't we invested a lot in that already? And then just to say bye, guys?
Sure. Do you think we've got a good investment in SunGuard? These are the employees that have to work with it often.
Okay.
Lindsay, come to the front, if you don't mind. I'll let you tell her some of her woes. Pull up a chair there. Oh, John's going to give you his. Tell her some of the problems that you've had with SunGuard.
There's definitely issues, some that will not be resolved. We do not have an online application. I don't foresee that anytime soon. That's not probably ever going to happen with SunGuard. We will have to outsource it and probably coordinate with another vendor in order to get that, because they can't produce it, even though they sold it to us. That's really our biggest headache. We have some struggle with employee online. They've came back and resolved most of it. We have one area of issue still, but that's the extent of HR right now, is applicant online.
So a lot of the issues too that we're experiencing is there is a team that meets with SunGuard once a month.
Our team, county team?
County team meets with SunGuard when we talk about issues and opportunities. In 5 years, we've not gotten the applicant online going. And they worked with Lindsay's team and my team extensively, but they cannot get it going. Why? They have all kinds of excuses, all kinds of reasons. They also have a lot of turnover. And that turnover, then somebody's got to come in and learn the program, then has got to learn whatever it is that they've got to do. But SunGuard's not been a great partner. They don't understand us. They don't really want to understand us. We had, in the implementation phase of that, we had numerous meetings that we even called their president of their company to come down and to talk to us, because we were unable to get the items that we believe we paid for. And in one case, was it applicant online? We had paid for applicant online and had the document approved, but they didn't have any record of it. And they didn't give me any of the license keys for it. They didn't give us any of the application software for it. So we had to fight with their company to get it. Now, it didn't cost any additional money. They provided, but it didn't work.
Okay, so you can sit there and tell us that you doing it better in your IT would be even better than even going to other experts, correct? I mean, are you giving us that assurance tonight?
I feel that comfortable, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
J.P. Harbs.
Well, computers and IT certainly is not my expertise. Cows are. Not even close. But I know it's important, and I know, writing programs and getting these programs, and I know, people that do these, and I know that a lot of this is we're plowing new ground, even with the companies that are still writing these programs. And if we can do it in-house, I think we need to give it a shot. Now, there may be something, some wall or glitch that you come up with that you might need to call someone in to help you out. But I think in the long run that we save money by doing this. We may not. That's a chance that we take. Now, the fiber optics cable, you said cost about $150,000, correct?
Yes.
And Cox charges us somewhere around $50,000 a year.
It's now over $100,000 a year for our total internet bill, but $54,000.
$54,000 for
the link.
For the link. Okay. So basically, in 3 years, we can pay for the fiber optics by installing it to South Campus?
Yes.
It would take us 3 years. Most of us, takes us longer than that to buy a car. So, I think we need to give the IT department the opportunity to do this. I know that the savings sound a lot, and they may not be correct. I mean, you're only making an educated guess.
Correct.
But I think it's an opportunity for the court to invest in the IT department, and I think we have qualified people, and I feel that it would be successful. Thank you.
Thank you.
J.B. Cochran.
Thank you, Judge. Well, my experience in IT is over 30 years of writing custom applications. So looking at the projects that John is proposing, I don't see any of them that are enormous tasks. They are big jobs, but we're not writing a program, developing a program that will put a rover on Mars. That is a huge, daunting task, not one that you do with a small staff. That's where you call in the expert guns and pay the man. On the packages that we've done on our own, one of them comes to mind in the planning department. We chose to be, I guess, co-developers would be the right way to say, and then take it on and have no maintenance cost thereafter. We'd only maintain it as we need to maintain it for changes in the operations of the business office. So I can speak. There are a lot of application developers out there working for industry and businesses, and they do that for one reason. It is more economical for them to design a package that fits their business plan exactly as they want it and can change it when they want it. And they hire a staff and pay them a salary, and they get the job done at a reduced cost to their company, which hits their bottom line. We don't technically have a bottom line, but it does reduce cost. So it hits our bottom line in our unappropriated reserves. So from the standpoint of employing more people to do that and having a pretty good laundry list of packages that they can be working on, my question is this: would you ever use any of those one or two people that you want to ask for help desk work and things of that nature, or will you isolate them off and say, sit in this little corner and do this deal and get it done?
The only time I would ever anticipate them having any help desk type of work is on the applications that they've written.
Okay.
So
and that's
their job, or what I envision, is you write the program, then you're going to train the help desk people what to look for that you can anticipate. Okay. And as the problem comes in, then they're to train the help desk staff so that they can solve that problem in the future.
Right. Sometimes it's just user misunderstanding or new user.
Yeah.
They've got a question. Where do I click on to get what I want?
Yeah.
Will you cross-train your employees on these builds so that in their absence on vacation or possibly leaving?
I'll have that opportunity for the first time, and that would be incredible.
Okay. As far as the return on investment for the fiber line, at Flatline, if Cox doesn't even increase, you've got $1,080,000 in Cox expense for a one-time charge of $150,000. Would anybody like that deal? I'd take it in a heartbeat. I'd go hawk everything I owned to say, over the next 20 years, you're going to give me $1 million, and I just give you $150,000 today. So, to me, that's a slam dunk. The adding extra employees is always tough for us, and it always will be. But I think that one would be appropriate. I know you asked for two. The backup devices that you want to put down there, originally you had asked for $375,000. Is the 225 for the backup?
Yes.
Okay, so those were just those two items. That's all I remembered in there. You're at 80% now. What is your expectation? You've seen the growth we put on
July.
June or July?
Yeah.
So it really isn't something we can push off unless we decide to pay the man and say we'll push it up to, say, Quadrivium or somebody like that. But that's expensive.
Yeah. And something else I did check out on backups is doing cloud backups or offsite backups. Right. Some of the vendors I've talked to, $7,000 a month to just back up our stuff through the cloud. So, and all that is just taking data, what they call data at rest. I'm just storing it somewhere, so if you ever need to retrieve it. Yeah. But they want $7,000 a month.
Yeah. Well, they've got to make a profit. They've got to have the super Caterpillar diesel engines for backup power, and they've got to give it to you 24/7. What do they do? Call it N+2.
Yep.
Got to have everything double backed up, and yeah, I understand that. Well, I really think that I don't know how everybody feels about each of the different pieces of this. So I'm just going to go on one of them, and then we can see how the others go. But as far as I can see, well, the question on the fiber. Our current size of the pipe is what? That we're
100 megs.
100 megs. What was the maximum size of the pipe of what we're going to build, if we build it?
I'll get 6 strands, and I can go up to 10 gigs.
So it's a 100-fold increase?
Yes.
Gosh, that's kind of even making it a better ROI, doesn't it? Because we know we're going to go over what we have now.
Yes. Technology bandwidth usage is just going to continue to go up with
Certainly.
all the things that's going.
Certainly. The more graphic.
So pay us now or pay us later.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'd like to pay them now. I'm not, I don't want to have to go get the motor rebuilt. I want to put the frame oil filter on now.
Yeah.
So I will make a motion that we fund the fiber installation, $150,000 in the capital line 4009.
Second.
Okay, now, kind of
Okay.
talk a little louder. I know you're having
I'm
a hard
sorry.
time
Yeah,
with your
I'm a little
voice.
hoarse there. My motion is to fund the $150,000 capital in line item, or line 4009, the capital line, for the fiber optic build between here and down at the Sheriff's Department.
And I understood Justice Dennis to second. Was that correct? Thank you.
Okay. I've got about 3, I'm letting you put you on the, okay. The next one I have is J.P. Bowman.
Thank you, Judge. John, I'm not a very technically literate individual. And the first thing I reflected on when you came with this request, number one, there's a lot of things in here and there's a lot of money in here. And I know that since you've arrived, the budget for the IT department has gone out of the, gone up, what, 10 times? And so anyhow, substantial numbers. And I think probably the way I felt, you backed up the truck here, the dump truck here, and unloaded a full tandem dump truck on us. And most of the stuff that you told us about went right over my head. And John, even I talked to our treasurer a while ago before we came in, before we started. Even though we've really hammered this budget this year, in addition to last year's numbers, we're still going to be down about $2 million from where we closed out last year. And so, with a concern about that is my primary concern. So, my first thought about this deal, the fiber optic thing sounds like a slam dunk. That's something I don't think there'd be a whole lot of question about, with a lot of assurance about it. Now, you're saying that the $150,000 installs, it purchases and installs and maintains the fiber optic system.
Now, they will not maintain it. They'll put it all in, install it, and turn it over to us for the $150,000.
Okay. Now, what?
And it's ours from that point forward.
What kind of maintenance issues are going to be involved?
As we said earlier, if a backhoe was to pull it out, we'll have to fix it.
Now, is this overhead or is it buried?
It's buried.
It's buried.
Yeah.
Okay.
Burying it protects it from the weather, the ice and snow.
Mhm.
And you don't have to have as much slack between the telephone poles.
Yep, right.
With it. So your cost of your cable is going to be a lot less.
What kind of easement are you using to put this in?
They will, Cablevision Internet will provide all that for us.
Okay. All right. Well, John, I guess my thought about this thing, if we'll go slow on this thing and take each one of these things one step at a time, I think we can approve all of them. But and I think the fiber optic seems to be the most favorable at this time. I have invested in a company that's hired all kinds of outside expertise to do programming, and they've done some pretty sophisticated stuff very successfully. Of course, they've had some oops along the way as well. But I'm wondering about being able to contract with people, because there's all kinds of independent contractors out here writing software.
And now, are you posing that as a question to me?
Yes.
Okay. So I used to be a consultant. So once the project is over, I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
So you want or need anything else, you got to call me back up. That's an additional cost.
Mm-hmm.
Here in the county, we don't just have 1 or 2 projects. We have a number of projects, and these 6 are just a small number that we've talked about. We can continue to keep these people working on these projects, customizing some of the changes that they want. In the assessor's office, Russell had said that he wanted something, and he asked for it, and they said, well, we've had that on the plate for 3 years. We shouldn't have to wait 3 years to make something change for their office. But we can continue to save money by customizing our applications in-house and providing better information, even reports for things. If we hired an independent consultant to come in and do this, it'll be just like SunGuard. Once they turn it over, it's ours. And the problem I feel like we often have with that is there's a lot of translation that can be lost sometimes, even though we do the best that we can to try to communicate what we need. But what I heard was blah, 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 blah. And that's what I got. And so I'll have to either be hard-nosed with them or pay them more. Because a lot of times it's, oh, well, that's a change order. So that's going to be time and materials. But even though I thought that was in our scope and was clearly outlined, a lot of times these software agreements are written so ambiguous that it's hard for everybody to understand.
The number you gave us about cost for salaries, was that for each individual or is that for both?
Total.
That's total, for two individuals?
Yes.
Okay.
And all their benefits as well.
And that does cover the benefits as well?
Yes.
Okay.
And the benefits, that was the FICA, the retirement, health insurance, life insurance.
Okay, all right.
And all that stuff.
Okay, well, I think it does it. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
JPS 3.
Thank you, Judge. Follow-up question on the,
Oh, no, hang on, JPS 3.
oh, I'm sorry.
We got about 4 more.
Just a couple of things. I mean, it's quite apparent that the payback is going to be very good on the capital items there. And the other thing is that I just want to go back to the fact that what you all did for the planning department, you integrated a number of departments. That was a fairly large program that you wrote, and it took you a while. But I'd say that thing was very successful.
Yes. I would like to call then the attention to the software at the coroner's office. We completely wrote that. The environmental affairs, we completely wrote that without any outside assistance. And those are really successful programs. We've incorporated within the road department and the planning department with those, and we're working on the treasurer's program right now.
So I guess the bottom
Point of
line of
order.
this thing is that
We've got a motion pending on the floor, and I think discussion should be limited to the motion. I know everybody's got lots to say, but we've got to dispose of that motion.
Okay.
We should, Judge, I, with due respect to Justice Hustry, I think we should be, at this point, focused on the fiber optic portion of this. We've decided to take it in 3 different bites.
Oh, okay. We'll be right back. Hang on just a minute. Okay, we have a motion. We have a second. Justice Maxwell?
Thank you, Judge. I have several questions, but the one I have pertinent to this is, can you estimate over the life of that, I think you said 20 years for this cable between here and the South Campus, what would you amateurize out the cost of maintenance, repair, whatever, between now and then per year?
Most of my experience with the fiber is once I put it in place, unless somebody disturbs it or an animal, something destroys it, we don't have any maintenance on it.
Right. But obviously there are some exceptional cases. So I'm kind of over a 20-year period. What do we need to be prepared? The cost is not just the cost of installation, and it isn't with anything. So I'm not picking on this, but just trying to get a good understanding of what it's really going to cost us. Cost us this much to get it put into the ground. But then I'm assuming either we had to buy, I don't know much about IT and at this level either. So that's why I'm deferring to you. But is there do we buy insurance for someone who comes in and splices it? Should there be a break, or how do we do that? Do we have insurance to cover the cost of going to Cox while it's down if there is a disruption? What are the fees or the charges that would typically happen with an instant? Let me ask it that way. If there is a disruption, what would you anticipate the cost to us for fixing that disruption, either through the insurance or however that is charged?
And I don't know what cable vision internet, but we've had one disruption since I've been here, and it's when they were building the parking deck out here. The backhoe pulled it up. It was fixed within 2.5 hours with their equipment. That cost, again, I don't know what they charge per hour, but cable vision internet could provide that service, and they is part of I could use. In other words, if I call them, they will come immediately.
Do you do that at the point of service, or do you do that in a monthly fee, or how does that charge?
As incident.
Okay.
So if I had the incident occur, I call them, and they respond.
And under our current circumstances, if something happens to Cox's line,
They'll
they
call
pay
Cable
that.
Vision Internet.
They pay that fee, not us.
Yeah.
Do you have any ballpark as to what a fixing fee like that one that we incurred, what that would be?
I don't. done. Usually, most of the fiber lines that I've got, again, until there's some of this disruption, we've had our own fiber splicing kit, so we could go down and splice it ourselves. I don't have anybody trained at that right now besides myself, but that is an option that we can do, is splice it ourselves. Once you put it in, unless somebody disrupts it, the cable just lays there, and we have the connectors at the other end. When I add a connector, that's about $600, but it's covered in the switch. So once I buy the switch, I've got all that connection.
Okay, so
I don't anticipate any maintenance, and I can't really gamble to say that, are they going to expand College Avenue or any of that roads going down through there? Maybe, maybe not. But the way Cablevision Internet will do it, it has to be moved, we'll all talk at that time. But don't anticipate that.
So ultimately, you feel comfortable that we have effectively no cost to maintain this over the next 20 years?
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you, Judge. I just have a quick comment. The only reason I came tonight was thinking that we were going to try to trim some things from the budget, and we seem to be going in the opposite direction than I had planned, so I'll be voting against this. Thank you.
J.P. Cochran.
Thank you, Judge. John, the line item that it pairs up with our internet connection and the fiber, you originally budgeted $150,000, and that was with the fiber in your budget. But that wasn't changed when we massaged it with a hatchet. Is the $150,000 an accurate number for next year with this fiber installed?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, Rick, we will be able to save some of that depending on when Cablevision Internet can put it in.
Right.
So they're not going to put it in January 1st.
I understand that.
Depending on the weather. But as soon as they can put it in, then I'll be able to save some money in that line item.
Okay. So should we adjust that based on your best guess, or?
I would say that we wait, and once we got it in, and I know those exact figures from Cox, because we'll sign a contract.
Okay.
Then I'll come back here and tell you how much that is.
Okay.
We can take it out.
I can,
Most certainly.
I can take that. That's a great gesture. Then we adjust that.
Right.
Comes back into unappropriated.
That'd be very appropriate.
All right. Thank you.
So now, are we ready to vote on
I
your
am.
motion?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Carla, would you call the roll, please?
Yes.
Just for the fiber, yes, ma'am.
We re-clarify the total amount just for the fiber, some of that's kind of mixing up.
150,000 in just for the fiber. That's installed and ready to go.
Carly, call the roll.
Bill Ussery? Yes. Daniel Balls?
Yes.
Harvey Bowman?
Yes.
Rick Cochran?
Yes.
Robert Dennis?
Yes.
Lisa Eki?
No.
Ann Harbison?
Yes.
Sharon Lloyd?
No.
Tom Lundstrom?
No.
Eva Madison?
No.
Sue Madison?
No.
Joe Maxwell?
No.
Gary McHenry?
Yes.
Joe Patterson?
No.
Butch Pond?
Yes.
Judged by a vote of 8 to 7, I have the ayes having it.
Okay. So, now okay, J.P. Ussery, I'm going to come back to you now because,
Okay. Just going back to the point that I was making originally, that is that I think that we have a number of big projects under our belt, and so something like this shouldn't be that big of a challenge. It's going to take time.
Right.
And the other thing is, once we have these people, they'll be free to work on a number of other projects that will save us money.
Yes.
You know, and I just, and this is just a personal thing for me, but it's hard for me to understand how we can sit here and we can spend 30 minutes talking about the constable's salary, and yet we've got an opportunity to save the county money, and then we vote not to save them money. I don't understand how we can do that. I'm going to go on from that, and I'm finished with that particular thing. And so I think that we probably need to go ahead and let's go ahead and talk about the next thing, which is putting in the additional servers that you need. If you could go over that one more time for us and what the costs are and the ramifications, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, so again, I'm at 80% storage capacity. The backup devices will be able to spread that backup through a number of years. with that. And that was for the rest of the capital item dollars.
Okay, and if we don't do that,
I'll be back in June, or we will have to come up with a contingency to say what we're not going to back up.
okay, and the total cost for that is?
$250? Is that right? I believe it is.
Okay, so I make a motion that we go ahead and that we approve buying the backup servers. Is this something that we need to do? And so I make a motion that we go ahead and do that, appropriate the money for that.
We have a motion and a second on the floor to appropriate the money for the backup service. Is this correct? Okay, now, J.P. Patterson, do you be recognized still for this one?
I was on a little different subject here, but anyway, has to do with the money.
Okay, go right ahead.
Well, when we hired you and started out 3 or 4 years ago, we started increasing employees, and we had computer stuff all downstairs, just sitting everywhere. You couldn't even hardly get through down there. But I don't see any of that there, so that's all got put in. What do these guys do now?
We have over 3,000 help desk calls per year that the help desk takes care of, and that's the majority of the staff that does that.
Okay.
Today, we're upgrading a lot of those systems that you saw downstairs. We're upgrading their operating systems.
Okay. And we talked a lot about, you did, how we're saving all these departments time's money, money's employees, but I haven't heard anybody, no one's come to us and said, well, I have an employee that I don't need anymore because the computers have made it so handy, but yet you've increased your people again, and you want to increase them again, and we're just going too fast for me, so I'm gonna vote against it, but anyway, that's my comment. Thank you.
J.P. Maxwell, did you get yours answered?
I didn't, but mine's on the personnel matter, something that I was waiting to.
Okay. J.P. Cochran.
Thank you, Judge. Looking back at the original request, the total for these two items was $375. So instead of $250, it should be $225, and I'll offer that as a friendly amendment.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
$225,000.
So now that's $225,000 for the backup system. Is this correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, who made the second on that?
Justice Dennis, do you accept that as a friendly?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay. Everyone understand what we're voting on? Carla, would you call the roll, please?
Bill Ussery,
Yes.
Daniel Balls,
Yes.
Harvey Bowman,
No.
Rick Cochran,
Yes.
Robert Dennis,
Yes.
Lisa Ecke, Ann Harbison, Sharon Lloyd,
No.
Tom Lundstrom,
No.
Eva Madison, Sue Madison, Joel Maxwell,
No.
Gary McHenry,
No.
Joe Patterson,
No.
Butch Pond,
Yes.
It failed. So, J.P. Ussery, where do we need to go from there?
Okay, so the two additional employees that you're looking for, I'd just like to kind of go over that one more time. And what was going to be the total cost on those two guys?
$127,506.
And how much do you anticipate saving the first year?
The first year, we will save $50,000 on the Data Scout project, and we'll be working on the SunGuard project, which we won't have to spend the $500,000 on.
Okay, and once those, but how much do you anticipate saving the next year on the other projects that this guy will be doing once the 8 months are finished for the first one?
Once we're finished with that one, then we'll be starting another one that will save us approximately $20,000 a year. And then we have the others, which is the right track, which will be saving us $28,000 a year. And that's in maintenance fees only.
Could you get by with one person?
It'd be tough to cross-train everybody, so when somebody's out to take their place. But it would mean that some of these projects would be a little slower.
Well, I'd like to make a motion that we go ahead and that we hire the 2 additional people with the $427,506. With the anticipated savings, I think these guys are going to well pay for themselves. And so I'd like to make that motion.
Second. Have a motion and a second. Discussion. J.P. Maxwell?
Thank you, Judge. John, do you have people that are on your staff now that have the competencies to do this kind of programming that you're talking about?
We just don't have the time to do them, but yes.
But you do have those people here?
Yes.
Would you say the savings from writing these programs and doing it in-house, if you had to prioritize them, did they supersede some of either the help desk calls or some of the things that we do that really, if these are you've laid out a very good plan as to how this could make us very much more responsive, let us write it in-house and handle our own stuff and save a lot of money. It seems to me like maybe that's something we should be moving up our priority list with or without these employees. Is that a fair assessment?
With the SunGuard, we have to make a decision next year as to whether we upgrade or not. So if we have the ability or flexibility to be able to program in-house, that will help us make that decision with that. I'm often asked, usually about the budget process time, what projects we want to do. And what I would like to do, if we have these 2 employees, is to also be able to have a project portfolio. This project portfolio says anybody that wants to turn in something. For example, you guys might have a project that you might like for us to do. We put those in there then, and we have the ability to be able to start putting a project list together to say, what gives us the best return on our investment? What is the best thing to do? But those departments are coming to us to help us with that. And then we need to present that out so we can say, this is the best bang for our products that we can get.
And I apologize, I maybe didn't ask my question very clear, but with the current personnel you have, is this project a high enough priority that even without adding personnel, does it deserve being moved to your project list?
Yes.
It does. So you will be working on this with or without the additional people?
Yes, it'll just take a lot longer, or I may not be able to get to SunGuard. Because in the meantime, the current staff that we have, we're supporting all the other programs that we got. And right now, we're writing the Treasurer's Program. It's been needed for some time to be upgraded. It's a custom program written by somebody outside. And we chose it. A lot of the projects that we get come from the elected officials saying, hey, I want this, or I need this. And it's hard to prioritize sometimes what those projects are because they have a value to them. But having the employees will also give us the ability to be able to conduct more projects and help them with their day-to-day needs.
Right. And I understand that. I'm just wondering if we're just looking at projects that are kind of on your table, where this rewriting SunGuard and these projects, I think there were 6 of them there that you mentioned, where that falls at. Is that way at the top, that this is such a cost savings and such a benefit to us as a county to be that responsive and to own it ourselves and to really build it ourselves? Is that something that would be at the top of the list, or would it be somewhere in the middle or at the bottom, I guess?
The SunGuard would be at the top of the list, as would Data Scout. Russell's been talking to me for some time because it would save him extremely amount of money in his office.
I guess I'm just curious, is there some reason we haven't started on this project if it's that high of a priority? Is there some reason we haven't already kind of started working on that?
You bet.
I know there's lots of other trouble calls and all that, but if this is at the top of the list, would we have benefited by having already begun the process?
When I first got here 5 years ago, as Joe was talking, we'd done a lot. We came out of the 13th century into the 21st century. We had computers that was not, they talked about it earlier on the Election Commission, XP and some of that. We had tons of stuff that was antiquated and couldn't be used. The employees or the offices didn't have any capacity to even collaborate together via phones or communications via email. And so we brought all these projects in, and it's taken us 5 years. We've rebuilt the whole infrastructure. We've rebuilt a lot of the requests for our hardware and software side of things. Now, as we're starting to mature more as an IT staff, we've already looked at some projects that I call, the low-hanging fruit, to get our skill sets up, to ensure that I've got the right people in the right place. The planning program, the road department program, the environmental affairs, the corner, all these products. So we've been working on those. And those were a higher priority because they had nothing the time. Now, each one of these comes up with a different type of priority. SunGuard wasn't a priority until they said it's going to cost us more money to upgrade it. And every time when Cheryl needs a report, they charge us. So it's at the time where it's almost at its end of its life. So that moves that in its priority. When we first got here, we just bought it. Couldn't justify, and we honestly had hoped that they would hold to their end of the bargain.
So if I understand right, it sounds like we can do this even without the extra personnel. And it is
Yeah, but it'd
important
take
enough that we would move it up to the top of the list and let something else take its precedence. So
It's potential, but it would not take 2 years. It would take me a lot longer than that.
Okay. Thank you.
J.P. Ecke.
Thank you, Madam Judge. Mr. Adams, did you approach the assessor's office or Judge Zimmerman's office, or did they approach you about doing these projects and writing?
Judge Zimmerman does it.
Or JDC, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Jeannie Mack
Jeannie Mack.
and Norma Frisbee.
They approached you?
Yeah.
And the assessor?
The assessor approached us.
I disagree. And I'm not going to vote for this until we get some verification that they did approach you on this and make sure that the conversations go the right way. Because from what I understand, they said that this was a proposal that was beyond what they really felt. That
And who's they?
Well, you're saying that they said they approached you.
Yeah, you're saying they. Who's they?
Who you said that they approached you.
Russell?
I don't think this conversation needs to go any further. That's
Well,
out of control.
I
mean, if you don't
I
want to
am not
vote on
going
it,
to
that's fine.
support this because I think I want to talk to Jeannie Mack, and I think I want to talk to the assessor's office and the other people saying, you know, who you're going to write this program to. I mean, we're being above board, and I want conversations to be correct and make sure we're on the same page. Thank you.
J.B. Lloyd.
Thank you, Judge. No disrespect, and I want this to be friendly. I feel like you're selling this with, and selling may not be the right word, that's the only thing I can think of right now, with all the savings. Just please, next year, we want to see this savings in the budget. If we go ahead and decide to do these things, I just feel like we want to make sure that we see the savings, okay? Thank you.
Justice Cochran.
Thank you, Judge. The two positions that you have requested, programmer and system analyst, will either of your positions, computer software design tech, have a opportunity to move into those slots and you hire somebody at the other? They don't have the skills that doing that? Okay. Next question, and it may be both to Attorney Zega and you. Have we the possibility to bring in someone from the University of Arkansas as a, what do we call them? Or unpaid? Intern, yeah, intern. I don't know if that's legal for us to do. It's not. Eva's shaking her head. Okay. Because that would be possibly one way.
What'd you say? Interns are paid?
Well.
You go ahead and
Interns
explain.
are paid. There's a lot of lawsuits right now over interns needing to be paid. They can only do it free
And
if it's course credit, like in
Yes.
conjunction with the class. Lindsay's shaking her head too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well,
But we did check into some interns. I don't feel comfortable because there's NTI or some, I think
Yeah,
that's what they're,
no, yeah.
they don't pay their interns.
Okay.
But
well-
I don't feel comfortable
well,
bringing
what-
them in for a long project and not paying them anything.
Well, I'm thinking not for a long project, but to take some of the work off of your existing staff so where they can put more time on the projects that are going to pay back. Is it possible? Is
I
it
don't
feasible?
think so. And the reason I don't, Rick, is that those personnel are just learning. And they're in an environment where they should have learned a lot of things, but there's a lot of things that we would hope that they already have from a job experience.
Okay.
To put
All
in
right.
there.
Thank you, Judge.
Okay. I've got about two more I can recognize. J.P. Harbison.
Okay, what was the savings on SunGuard? I didn't get that written down.
$500,000 for the product and $35,000 a year for maintenance.
35, okay. That's not a year. That's just doing away with it. Once you get the programs written and take over, then we no longer need them. So if we write a new contract whenever their contract comes up, then that's $500,000.
That's it, yes, for the product.
Okay, so we've got, because I had 48,000 and 50,000 on a Data Scout, which is 98,000. So, this is another one of those things that in 3 years is going to pay for itself. And so, I don't think we can do any better than that. And of course, the pros and cons of the kinds of glitches, things change, technology changes, but I will be supporting this. Thank you.
Yeah, but I've got two more I'm going to recognize. Yeah, we have a second. Go ahead.
I remembered, I was confused what Ms. Huffaker was talking about. Isn't SunGuard an accounting program?
It's accounting, HR, purchasing, customer relations program.
Because I couldn't imagine that it would do online applications. That just seemed like something very inconsistent.
SunGuard provides lots of different modules in their product. So several of the modules, one is purchasing, so you can get your PO. You got your P card, which is a custom product with it. You've got applicant online, employee online. There's some other things that they offered that we didn't choose to take. The accounting part for it as well. And each individual budget line items, all those people can see those things online.
Did we have a contract for that? I mean, why wouldn't it have breached a contract for us to pay for something we didn't get?
That's a great question.
Okay.
Hang on just a minute. Mr. Butler?
We can hear all night on this.
Let's not do that.
Yeah, we're about tired of this.
With SunGuard, and we thought several times we were getting close to declaring a breach of contract. We didn't ever pull that lever for the simple fact that once that letter was written and signed off by me as county attorney back then, everybody would clam up. And so we attempted workarounds and got things resolved the best they could. The contract itself, is, as I found, the software contract is notoriously vague, and trying to interpret it to cover everything that everybody thought it was going to cover was a really tough task. But we came close several times with them and decided not to pull that lever.
Well, I like that version a whole lot better than the one that would have us here all night. So I have one more question for Mr. Adams. It occurred to me that this $500,000 cost we're talking about, we already purchased SunGuard. So right now we're only paying an annual maintenance cost.
And for their new product to upgrade to it, that's their estimated cost to it.
We don't have to upgrade, though, right?
They'll have an end of life on the current product.
What is that end of life?
They told us that another 2 years.
Okay. So I know I'm not suggesting that this is the best option, but we can continue to use a software program after it's no longer supported, right?
You can. With SunGuard, I don't know of a day or a month that goes by that we don't call them for some sort of support.
Okay.
To fix something or adjust something.
And so you're talking about not the $500,000 you're talking about is not like an instant savings. It's just an anticipated cost if we upgraded into a couple years.
Money we would not have to spend.
Okay. And so right now, what's the maintenance cost?
The maintenance cost on that is $35,000 a year.
Okay. So the $500,000 is sort of a potential savings. The $35,000 a year is the only expected savings. And I know Justice Lloyd asked about, we want to see those savings in next year's budget. We will not see them in next year's budget, right?
Not 2016, but 2017, next year when we come back.
That would be the Data Scout.
Data Scout we should see next year.
Okay, because I thought you said it would take 2 years.
But SunGuard, it'll take 2 years.
Okay.
But we will see that the Data Scout should drop out.
Well, let me ask this. If SunGuard's going to stop need an upgrade in 2 years and it's going to take us 2 years to write it, is that going to all that sounds sort of magical that it's all going to come together that nicely.
Yeah. We've had great conversations upstairs about it. 2 years, in that time frame, the last 6 months or so will be a lot of testing to make sure that the product works and fix any bugs or fixes that they need. But the teams will be working with them to make sure it's all ready to go.
Okay, thank you, Judge.
J.P. Lundstrom.
Judge, I call the question.
Second.
Okay.
Judge, that's a non-debatable and probably needs to go by voice vote.
Okay. So now we're voting,
On the question, to close debate.
okay.
It takes
Carly,
two-thirds.
call the roll, please. To end debate.
Bill Ussery,
Yes.
Daniel Balls,
Yes.
Harvey Bowman, Rick Cochran, Robert Dennis, Lisa Eki, Ann Harbison, Sharon Lloyd,
End debate, yes.
Tom Lundstrom,
Yes.
Eva Madison,
Yes.
Sue Madison, Joe Maxwell, Gary McHenry, Joe Patterson, Butch Pond,
Okay.
The ayes
So
have
now-
it on the closing of debate, Judge.
So now we are ready to take a vote. J.P. Ussery, tell us what your, do you remember your motion?
Yes, ma'am. The motion is to hire two people with a cost of $127,506.
And who was our second?
Justice Harbison, Judge.
Okay. Okay, let's do a roll call, Carly.
Bill Ussery,
Yes.
Daniel Balls,
Yes.
Harvey Bowman, Rick Cochran, Robert Dennis,
Yes.
Lisa Eki. Ann Harbison. Sharon Lloyd.
No.
Tom Lundstrom.
No.
Eva Madison. Sue Madison. Joe Maxwell. Gary McHenry. Joe Patterson. Butch Pond.
Yes.
It failed.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you, John.
The six.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Thank you, Judge. Members, like I said earlier, I came here tonight expecting that we were going to try to trim or make some difficult decisions about the budget that we've all worried about being a little short on reserves. And if you'll remember back to one of our very earliest budget meetings, we were issued what I considered to be a threat by the University of Arkansas that if we didn't pick up the slack on the extension service, they were going to cut our extension service. And we fell for that threat. And I'd like to remind everybody that this is the same institution that overspent a budget in one department by $4.1 million several years ago. I mean, that's how careful they are with their money. But yet, they saw fit to cut some services to the public in the extension office, forcing us to take up the slack. And I would like to revisit that issue if we could determine exactly what that amount was that we were threatened. From looking at the budget, I think it was about $60,000. I think it took out one of the agents, perhaps. Is that what everybody's memory is?
We voted on one. We just gave them one. Instead of the three they were asking.
Okay.
Bernie,
So it
would
was
you like
about
to come forward and
$60,000.
explain that to us, please? I'm sorry. There seems to be a question of what the cut was, or what we actually appropriated for the agency, what the court allowed. Can you remember what the court allowed for your budget? First, let me make some bring, before we go any further. Does the court want to consider this tonight? Okay. J.P. Madison, was that a motion that you to consider this tonight?
Yes, ma'am.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
No.
Okay, we will consider this tonight. Go ahead.
Just a moment.
That's okay, take your time. It's kind of a spring it on you.
The initial ask was $222,000. That was to support the staffing prior to some changes that we had at the office with some resignations and one promotion to another county. So that left me 3 shy. But that you all have been supporting the staffing with, I believe, 97,000. That should be on here. Yes, 97,705 in past several years. We're looking at 12, 13, and 14 here, and there no changes in support and salaries for staffing. The request at this point for the same amount of staffing was to up the 97,705 to that 222,000, and you all at this point have approved moving up that request to 157,000, and that will allow me to hire 2 staffing back, so I'll be 1 short.
Yes, you're recognized.
I just want to make sure I still have the
No,
floor.
you
I kind
do.
of lost track. Thank you. That was what page 157 in our budget manual showed me, and that's what I was thinking. It was
Yes.
about $60,000. And inasmuch as the University of Arkansas is a land-grant college, I would think that the work of our Extension Service would be of extreme importance to the University of Arkansas as a land-grant college. So I am utterly dismayed that the Division of Agriculture chose to manipulate their finances in this way, and that we have fallen for it. The Extension Service does valuable work. We all know that. As Master Gardener, I know that. But I think it's time to perhaps take a stand and not be treated this way by the university. They should be supportive.
We must understand, if I may speak.
Yes, you're recognized. Go ahead.
We must understand that the University of Arkansas campus here in Fayetteville is totally separate from budgeting processes within the university system. They are a sister to us, but they're totally separate. Our budgets never mix. Our monies never mix. So campus has nothing to do with us financially. We're sisters in the organization, but there's no mix.
I understand the nuances of that, but nevertheless, the university system within its operation had a unit that overspent a budget by $4.1 million that was a shock to everybody. And here we're talking about $60,000 for your office. And I would move that we reduce their budget by the $60,000 that we originally did because of the manner in which we were threatened.
It has died for a lack of a second. Do what? I'm sorry.
I don't want to be out of order.
Okay, Steve.
Judge, well, the motion was to reduce
Extension.
reduce the extension budget by the $60,000 y'all approved. There was no second heard. Without a second, there's nothing on the floor to discuss.
I'll second it.
Okay. So now it's a second. So now, Ann, did you have discussion?
Well, no, I'll have discussion since I'm on the floor. I think we've approved this budget, and Bernie has no control over the University of Arkansas and their budgeting process. It's fallen to us to pick up the difference, and we've picked up the difference. And I think it's, let's use the correct word here, to come back and reduce it after we have already gone through and approved it because the university because someone at the vice chancellor's position, if I remember correctly, collected money for something $1 million on this campus, and it was misappropriated or whatever. That doesn't have anything to do with the Washington County Extension Office. Yes, the state of Arkansas should pick it up, but they didn't do it, and we have. And we have the money to do it. So that's all I have to say about it. Thank you.
Any other discussion? J.P. Cochran?
Thank you, Judge. Basically, one section of our state legislature approved your budget, but another
No, they
section,
both approved it.
and then
was
it didn't
cut
get
in
funded.
the-
And then it didn't get funded. Is that
It was
correct?
cut in the,
Appropriation time?
revenue stabilization
Right, okay.
process.
So, but basically, they said, yeah, this is a good thing, and then that group comes in and say, sorry.
The few, yes.
Yep. Well, my recollection of our earlier meeting on this budget was that we were to fund you 2 employees to get you one short of what you normally would like to operate at to do all your chores. And that our job and your job was to get the state to pay attention and us not to have this expense next year. Is that
Is
that a good summary?
Yes.
Yeah. So I will support our decision because it's kind of a joint decision it's work for you to do. It's work for us to do, to get them to wake up and understand the value of what your group does. And we're not agreeing to fund this amount next year because we're wanting to get it that way. And that's what I recall as well, that it was kind of a one-time deal. So I'll support this for 1 year. Thank you, Judge.
Now, we have a motion on the floor, and we have a second. Okay, J.P. Ecke?
I want us to realize that the Extension Service and all those little 4-H'ers that came in here, they're our future. They're the future of this county. And I was hoping to find ways to get you fully funded. I've been racking my brain, kind of come up with all sorts of things. And I know if I was a 4-H'er like I used to be, there's not enough bake sales that I could possibly do to help that. But I'm going to support the budget as is and continue to support the Extension Service because these young men and women are our future. And I want to communicate to them that we support them, even though the state legislatures let them down. We don't, and we won't. Thank you, Madam Judge.
J.P. Dennis?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. First, I'd like to say to J.P. Madison, if I could, I appreciate what you said. I think it might have been misunderstood. I misunderstood it at first, but I applaud you for challenging the university. I do. I think your heart's in the right place. So I wanted to say that. And then number 2, since we approved 2 people, how come one of those can't be for the 4-H? I just wanted to ask you that, just out of curiosity.
You're recognized. Go ahead.
The need the 4-H agent we had, I had to move to become our family consumer science agent because that's the void we have had since summer. So that was needed to be took care of. So we do not have a 4-H agent at that time. We do not have anyone else on staff that is trained at FCS. We do have a very much a priority need to hire a individual on staff that is animal science trained. We're the second largest agricultural county in Arkansas, and that is because of livestock. We do not have anyone in my office supporting our livestock enterprise for Washington County. Not at all. Hadn't for a year and a half. So that leaves, that's those two positions The second position that I'll be filling is the 4-H program, 4-H program assistance position, which is a lower classified employee, which I see that could fill the void of having a 4-H agent. And then our 4-H program assistant that we had until this summer moved on to Texas A&M as a 4-H agent in Texas.
J.P. Madison. Well, no, which one?
Thank you, Judge. Since we approved this, a comment was made to me that, and I don't think anybody here tonight will question the value of 4-H and what it does for our young people. But someone raised to me the question of whether it ought to be a taxpayer funded proposition, because there are a lot of great organizations that help our kids, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. You think about all the organizations out there, nonprofits, they're not funded by tax dollars. If we start handing out money to every organization that helps young people, we'll be broke. The county won't have any money. And so I don't doubt the usefulness of the position. I question whether it ought to be government supported. It seems more like a nonprofit type position to me, so I'm kind of struggling with it. I supported the increased funding. I think what's given me pause now is the 4-H component of it, not because I've questioned the value of it. I just question whether we should be supporting what seems like a nonprofit endeavor. I mean, otherwise it seems like the Girl Scouts should come in and the Boy Scouts should come in and the Big Brothers, Big Sisters. I mean, all these organizations that help kids, and there's just not enough money to go around. So I'm a little up in the air on this one right now. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Judge, may I address that?
Yes, you can speak.
The 4-H program is a USDA government program that has been in operation for over 100 years. It is science-based with university support. So it's truly university-supported program that's educational driven. That there is no other organization for youth that is so educational driven with the science base behind it.
Thank you. Great. J.P. Madison.
Thank you, Madam Judge. I think I said last night that part of my dismay was that we haven't made any hard decisions on this budget. We've really acquiesced to nearly everyone's requests. And to say that we have the money while recognizing that the University of Arkansas doesn't is somehow out of balance to me. The University of Arkansas has a foundation that does private fundraising that they can spend in lots of different ways. They have an enormous budget. And the fact that the legislature passed their budget and that revenue stabilization didn't prioritize it simply means that the state didn't have enough money. But the university has many sources of money other than state. They have tuition money, they have federal money, they have private money. So the decision was made by the University of Arkansas that this was not a priority.
May I address
it was
that
kicked
again?
to us. Let me finish, because I'm going to finish closing here. So I think while we're trying to build the county reserve so that we have money when we have a major ice storm, when we have some floods that happen, if we have a manhunt, to take care of surprises that happen in the county, we've struggled to try to do that and maybe not quite hit the mark we had in mind. We do have the lawsuits that I've brought up. So this is not that much money, I realize. But I think we need to ask ourselves if we're making the hard decisions that we were elected to make. I mean, as elected people, we like everybody to love us, and they love us when we sprinkle money. But I'm not sure that that's our job. So I love the Extension Service. I've worked closely with them on many issues over the years. I was in the charter class of Master Gardeners for Washington County. I've taught for Master Gardeners. So this is not necessarily a problem with me and the Extension Service. It is simply a matter of county funding and what our what our goals ought to be as elected JPs. Thank you.
You're recognized, Bernie.
I just want the court to know that the University of Arkansas system of the Division of Agriculture is totally separate from the University of Arkansas that we know of as campus university. What they do on campus has no influence, no change to us. They do not support us by a penny, not a penny that does ever flow between campus and the Division of Agriculture, which houses the Extension Service. Not a penny. They can raise the tuition tenfold, and we will never see a penny of that. That never flows our direction. So we're totally separate. So I just want you all to understand that.
Thank you. J.P. Harbison?
I'm going to call the question.
Second.
Okay. So now,
Judge, you don't have to call the roll on that if you don't want to, but you can. You're voting on closing debate.
okay, all in favor of closing debate, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Debate's closed. Okay, so now we are ready for the vote.
Will you state it for us, please, what we're voting?
Motion by Justice Madison to reduce the extension budget by, the previously approved extension budget by $60,000, seconded by Justice Lloyd.
Okay,
May I ask one more question?
yes, go ahead.
A yes vote is to reduce it. Am I correct?
A yes vote reduces the budget by $60,000.
Thank you.
Okay. Carly, would you call the roll, please?
Bill Usry? No. Daniel Balls?
No.
Harvey Bowman?
No.
Rick Cochran?
No.
Robert Dennis?
No.
Lisa Eki?
No.
Ann Harbison?
No.
Sharon Lloyd?
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom?
Yes.
Eva Madison?
No.
Sue Madison?
Yes.
Joe Maxwell?
No.
Gary McHenry?
No.
Joe Patterson?
No.
Butch Pond?
No.
Thank you, Bernie. You want to make, go ahead, you're recognized.
I'm going to make a motion that we approve the budget as is,
Go
with the
ahead,
addition
Steve.
that we made tonight.
Hang on just a minute, Steve.
Justice Harbison's motion is unfortunately not in order because we're back on first reading after the amendment. I have to read it.
Go ahead and read it for us,
Well-
please. Hang on just a second. Steve, what are we?
Well, Justice Cochran is the sponsor.
Okay, go ahead.
Judge, before we go into that, I have one item on our budget controls that I'd like to throw a possible idea out. In item 6, where we talked about our bonus for the employees for next year, paying it in July and December, thinking more about this and thinking about employee morale, I would propose that we pay in January and July to get the money in their hands just a little earlier and leaving the rest of item 6 intact. Basically, I would just be changing the 2 payout periods.
Changing the what?
Changing the payout period. Presently, it says July and December, and I would propose we move it from January to January and July. So we're paying 6 months earlier, essentially.
Okay, now I need to do something here.
Okay.
I need to ask Cheryl, is that a problem?
No, because Ashley does payroll.
Ashley, is that a problem?
I think that's great.
Oh, I just don't want to bog y'all down with the others. Okay, so,
I'll second the motion.
okay.
Thank you.
Yes,
I just have a question. What is our anniversary date for being a year employed? Is that still part of this motion?
none of that changed, just the date the money will actually be paid.
So if you were employed for 1 year on January 1, you get paid on January 1? Okay.
Okay.
First pay cycle, that's not a regular pay cycle, because they need to do bonuses on a different week, as I understand it. Thank you, Judge.
Okay. Are we ready to call, the roll call on this? Carly, would you call the roll?
Bill Ussery?
Yes.
Daniel Balls?
Yes.
Harvey Bowman? Yes. Rick Cochran?
Yes.
Robert Dennis. Lisa Eki. Ann Harbison. Sharon Lloyd. Tom Lundstrom.
Yes.
Eva Madison. Sue Madison. Joe Maxwell. Gary McHenry. Joe Patterson. Butch Pond.
Okay.
Thank you all. I
That-
think that speaks well to our employees, that although we can't do much for them this year, we're going to do it sooner, what we can do.
Okay.
So, item 6.1 on the agenda is going back on first reading. Since we have amendments that we've done tonight, I'll ask Steve Zaga to read the ordinance, please.
An ordinance recognizing revenues and appropriating monies for the expenditures in each fund for Washington County, Arkansas for the year 2016, and adopting a budget for the various departments reflecting the line item expenditures thereof. Be it ordained by the Quorum Court of Washington County, Arkansas, Article 1. The Quorum Court of Washington County, Arkansas has prepared a county budget for the year 2016 for all funds. Said budget reflecting the anticipated revenues of Washington County and the line item expenditures authorized for each department within each fund of said county, the number and compensation of deputies and county employees, and the compensation of county officers. Article 2, a copy of said 2016 budget for each fund with approved amendments shall be on file in the county clerk's office. Article 3, the said 2016 budget is hereby incorporated herein and adopted in full, and all expenditures reflected therein are authorized to be expended. Article 4, the 2016 budget controls are hereby adopted and incorporated herein as if set out word for word. Article 5, the collector's unappropriated fund is a fund separate and apart from the above funds and as administered by the county. Article 6, if any part of this ordinance is held invalid, such invalidity will not affect any other portion of this ordinance. Article 7, all laws and parts of law in conflict with this ordinance are repealed.
Okay, is there, Attorney Zaga, this is required to go 3 readings, is that correct?
No, as an appropriate, well, if it gets 10 votes, it will not be
Okay, all right.
as an appropriation.
I will move 6.1 to be passed.
Second. I have a motion and a second. J.P. Madison?
I'm going to move to table this because it's 8:30, and I want to consider something as significant as the budget when I'm fresh, and I've not been in a meeting for 3 hours. We're meeting on Thursday already, and I think all of us need that. We need to give time to let it soak in. We made a change tonight to the budget, and I think we're tired. I'm tired. So I move to table.
Second.
I have a motion and a second, not discussed.
It's not debatable, Judge. May I make
Yes,
an inquiry
please.
of?
Yes.
It was implied from your statement, Justice Madison. Are you moving to table it to Thursday night specifically?
I thought you'd last advised us not to do that, so.
No, and that's why I was asking. I was not sure whether you were asking for it to be tabled to a date certain, or you're just leaving it indefinite to be brought back off the table by motion.
Well, tell me what procedurally would be better.
I still recommend, for the same reasons I discussed with Justice Lundstrom last night, that y'all bring it back off the table.
Okay.
However, having said that, right, that's the parliamentary side. The practical side is y'all are going to have to bring this budget off the table at some point and
Okay.
actually vote on it. So I would just ask you to keep that other part of it in mind.
Okay.
You can ask for that as a privilege, Judge.
Okay.
Justice Pond asked for a roll call, and he's entitled to ask for that on the motion to table.
Okay. So what exactly,
Just have Carly call the roll.
Carly, call the roll.
Bill,
Hang on just a minute.
Just for clarity, what is it that we're voting on?
You're voting on Justice Madison's motion to table, seconded by a number, but the first one I heard was Justice Lloyd. So all you're doing with this vote is deciding to table. That's
So
not
now,
debatable.
I've got to know something. Now, does this first reading count toward the first reading
Yes.
tonight? So
However, yes, the first reading counts. However, regardless, it either gets read 3 times at 3 separate meetings if it doesn't get 10 votes and it's on the first reading, or you're going to get majority votes on the budget at 3 different readings.
Okay, that's what I needed to know, just make sure.
3 different meetings. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm tired too.
Carly, please call the roll.
Bill Ussery. Daniel Balls. Harvey Bowman. Rick Cochran. Robert Dennis. Lisa Eki. Ann Harbison. Sharon Lloyd.
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom.
No.
Eva Madison.
Yes.
Sue Madison.
Yes.
Joe Maxwell. Gary McHenry. Joe Patterson, Butch Pond,
9. It passed.
So,
Motion to table is agreed or passed.
are we ready for citizens' comments? Everybody's tired. Do I have a motion to adjourn? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.